Yeah, that was bad.
I think we have audio.
Try that yodeling, Joe.
We have on, okay. Share this. And we are recording and audio is live. Go ahead.
All right, great.
Folks, we're good to go, Jeff.
Okay, welcome everybody to our February meeting of the Admin and Public Works Committee. We got a couple good items here on the agenda tonight that I think will take some good conversation time, so we'll get started with that. Before we get moving too far, let's do our roll call.
Councilmember Preston. Councilmember Mabry.
Here.
Councilmember Nyan. Here. Councilmember Farmer.
Here,
Councilmember Marshall.
Good.
Councilmember Backert. Councilmember Vanek.
Here.
Councilmember Albers.
Here.
okay, looks like we've got enough folks. That brings us to the approval of minutes from our January meeting. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or comments before we make that approval? If not, a motion to approve them would be in order. Made by Mr. Mabry, seconded by,
Happy second. We have a discussion.
sure.
In the minutes, when people vote against something, don't we put in the individual votes? Who voted for and who voted against?
Yeah.
It depends if it's a roll.
If it's a roll call, you
Yeah.
do, but otherwise you don't.
Yeah, if it's just the, if
But
it's,
I mean, for years we did it that way, so you knew who voted yes and no on the different subjects, so we no longer do that.
That's why you do a roll call vote.
Doesn't somebody have to ask up front? Do it by a roll call or just do it by consensus, isn't it?
I mean,
said
In
too,
the passes, but I don't know, that's how, whatever we're saying, but in the past, my guess, we'd say, everyone voted there except Ed Marshall abstained, or Ed Marshall voted no. So otherwise, it looks as if everybody was unanimous. And I don't think we had a lot of unanimous votes last meeting.
I noticed that too. It's
they all probably add that in. I think let me check my
passed by
report.
a majority
Yeah.
or something.
I mean, I can see some other real advantages, but I know for a fact in campaigns before, where people came in and went through all the minutes to say he voted no on this, he voted no on this,
Right.
and that's true.
that said, I mean, that in the minutes, so that would then reflect technically a roll call vote is taken each time. That's at
Well,
least my-
you could, I mean, so I'm just looking back at the thing.
But we are taking a roll call.
Yeah, you're not calling names.
It's a voice vote.
It's a voice vote, but even then, like, so I'm looking back at the report, Amy, that I sent over to
I
you.
know who voted no, but I was instructed not to put that name in, so.
I mean, I think it makes sense.
It doesn't matter, I just.
I do think it's kind of important. I agree with that. Like, I do think it is kind of important, especially if things are like,
For formatting, I get what you're saying. For formatting purposes, instead of having it say, like, because then it would be kind of confused as.
It's not unanimous though, is what all I'm saying is. So when it
Yep.
says motion passed, that's fine, it passed. But it wasn't all people for it.
It could in theory say the majority, we could reword it with the city attorney's assistance here too, to say the majority voted to approve or disapprove, whatever it might be. And then, this person voted no or abstained. We could add that in, but not have it listed like we do with a roll call where it shows each individual's person's name along with their
Their vote.
affirmative or
yeah, I mean, like,
nay or, nay.
that report I sent over, which was just from the transcript, just like at one of these I'm just looking at. So it says all in favor except Mr. Vanek opposed.
Right. That's fine, but I think it should say on there, if it passed, Mr. Vanek opposed.
Sure.
Then it should say everyone who voted for it.
We can do that too.
Well, you have that in the
It should be
attendance.
all or nothing, because if you voted no, you shouldn't be called out for voting no any more than you should be identified for voting yes. It should be roll call.
Just my 2 cents worth. I just think it's important.
Yeah, it's okay. We can.
Because in all fairness, there's a good reason he didn't want to vote for it.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't just appear that everybody said, oh yeah, it was good.
Oh, I'm kidding.
We'll try, well, can I? Let me get started, don't get me started.
I don't change it because I'm
Brings up
asking. I kind of thought that that's how.
I've waited 2 years to ask this, but I don't get why someone just says, should we take a roll call vote on this? And I go, well, who decided that we should or shouldn't, or why we will or won't?
Well, it's at the council level, if it's an ordinance or something along those lines, a roll call vote is absolutely necessary.
If it's an ordinance, then it's
Yeah.
a roll call. I never knew
Yeah,
that.
But then in other instances, especially at a committee level, it's really at the it's up to the chair. If they do a voice vote and it seems that there might be significant opposition or in support, it might be split, they can do a roll call vote to clarify, but typically it's at the discretion of the chair.
So every time it's a vote for an ordinance in a council meeting, no one have to ask, should we do a roll call? Because everybody will know we should do a roll call.
For an ordinance, yes.
But if
Yeah,
it's
it's
to
not-
say to Director Vunich, we make a motion, you go back and find 3 more answers or something, then that's just by voice.
That's typically gonna be a voice vote, and then if say you call that voice vote and you hear a bunch of, no's that weren't anticipated, that's typically when someone will say, hey, to get clarity, let's go ahead and do a roll call, and then the minute taker will run through the whole roll.
And at committee level, we never have to have no stinking roll call votes because we're not enacting any ordinances,
We
right?
could still do it. There's nothing against
Here's
it.
part of the dilemma, when something is coming out of the committees and you're not setting in, so if I'm sitting on Parks and Planning, I'm not on the Parks and Planning thing, but I see something that went through, I just assume everybody's in favor. Only to find out later, 3 of the 7 weren't voted against it. Well, I'd like to know before it gets to council, why did they not think that was the right thing to do? I mean, to me, it just, a little bit more clarity, I'm sure it's more administrative challenge, but for years, that was always like, if there's a split on it, and some people never voted for public street, it's always a no. And other people would give you the reason that they didn't want to vote for that. Maybe it's something in their ward, maybe it's just something that they felt
So
that wasn't.
then maybe what we'll do, and we'll use tonight as a good test for this, we'll do what we've always done, which is just sort of a voice vote, but then if somebody is opposed to something, that's totally cool, we'll just do a roll
Or
call.
abstain, if they abstain.
Yeah, whatever,
I mean,
yeah.
That's fine
If
too.
it isn't unanimous, we'll do a roll call, all right? Okay, other than that, Mr.
Second.
Marshall, you'll second the,
Already did.
okay, any other discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the January meeting, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. That one passes. That brings us to public participation. There's nobody here in the room this evening. I don't think I see anybody on Zoom. Is there anybody in the waiting room?
If you have interest in speaking, I do see one person in the waiting room, but if you're interested in providing public comment, now would be the time to use the raise hand feature and we can promote you to become a panelist. Okay, no, and then
Oh, all right.
have one.
Mr. Trottier has your hand. You want to do public comment, Matt?
I guess this is a question with your permission. Tom, is my comment that we discussed earlier appropriate now or later in the meeting?
You're technically an ex officio of the committee. I would say outside of it, with the chair's permission, at the discretion of the chair, I would say outside of public comment, considering typically public comments reserved for residents.
Perfect.
Yeah, do we do?
So then you want to do it later then?
In theory, it could be now or later, but it would be at your discretion. But technically, this is a good reminder for council members too. All council members do serve as officios of each committee, even if they're not appointed to it. They just don't have the ability to to make a motion or to vote at those committees, but they can obviously show up to those meetings and provide comment at the discretion of the chair.
Matt, are you getting ready to eat dinner?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, honestly, it doesn't really make a difference to me, Matt. I think that if you don't do it now, it's gonna probably be a while. So if you don't want to be on the whole meeting, I guess now would probably be the appropriate time.
I can do either. And Tom, this is a question for you. I had sent you a brief memo earlier. Did you get a chance to print that and distribute that? If not, I can make my comment now.
I have not, Councilmember Trottier, been caught up the second half of today.
Okay, well, if it's all right with Chair Farmer, I can just go ahead and make my comment now addressing the particular issue.
Sure.
All right, so on the agenda this evening, Section 6 Public Works, Item B, which is a 4-action item related to contractor proposals for the 2026 concrete street replacement project. When looking at the agenda and the proposed budget, I noticed that the bids that we solicited from various contractors effectively cover 2 distinct scopes of work, one being maintenance citywide And the maintenance activities were bid on by the contractors at a unit rate, not scope or project specific. And then the second item that was bid upon was the Turnberry Place Drive entrance removal. And that particular item was bid as a lump sum item, not a unit rate. So without addressing the merits of either maintenance or the Turnberry issue, I felt it appropriate that these items should be broken out into two separate and distinct actions. So as opposed to lumping them together in what I feel is a maintenance scope of work, I would advocate that one actionable item is the approval of a maintenance contract for a particular vendor to conduct maintenance work as it's been bid per unit rate citywide. And then I think it would be appropriate to have a second item for review specific to the Turnberry Place Drive project. Ultimately, the maintenance is what it is. The Department of Public Works has their own criteria for evaluating what areas of city roadways and sidewalks need maintenance. And then in turn, the department has a separate set of criteria for which they use to evaluate entrances such as the Turnberry Place Drive entrance. So I feel as though these are two separate items, should be addressed separately. Furthermore, I do believe that the Turnberry issue itself probably is deserving of a more focused review of the particular scope of work, the details, what's going to be implemented, as opposed to rolling it up in a broader maintenance activity that is generic and applicable citywide. So with that, I've made my comment, and I think that's about all I can do.
Okay. Well, we will, I guess, we can, if somebody wants to talk more about that, we can do that when we get to the item, but if not, you're more than welcome, I guess, to hang out and watch the rest of this thing, and we can get there when we get there.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anybody else on there? Okay, with nobody else online and no one in the room, that brings us to the end of our public comment and into our administration section of the meeting, starting with a proposal for the preliminary design of alternative stormwater storage and management systems for the Wildwood Municipal Building Site. This is going to be very exciting. Let's hear all about it, Tom.
Yes, very, very much so.
Watch the wall leak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I first wanted to start this off with a kind of a notification too, that an email was sent out today to notify the ad hoc building committee of an upcoming meeting. We've got enough items now. We've got quite a few that we'll need to cover for some maintenance items that are going to come up for the building this year, but also kind of the most important discussion item of that committee and for the maintenance of the building more generally is this issue we have with our water basin that is directly south of the building here. When you go out the back door in the back parking lot, you'll notice a large basin that's directly abutting the concrete foundation of the building. When we had geotechnology go through and do an analysis of that basin, but also multiple areas of the city, it was found that City Hall there, it was found that the basin itself was storing water. Unfortunately, the water was being it's not being drained properly away from the building's foundation, which causes a constant pressure up against the concrete wall. And then leads to, over time, where we've actually experienced it in the women's restroom, but also in the back hallway over here, we've experienced water infiltration at the actual building itself. And what that leads to is going to happen again, is there's no drain that's currently placed there. And when we did our excavation, we had 4 different test pits that were dug up about 10 feet down. And when they went that deep, they found that underneath, in one of the holes got deep enough, underneath they did not have the drainage at the footer. What that does is when there's a large rainstorm, that water sits, pools, and then can seep into the side of the building over time, but also would actually saturate the soil underneath the building as well. And where this becomes more particularly concerning too for our building is that we also found when doing two core samples within our foundation that there were signs of expansive soils, especially in the sample that was taken in the back hallway here towards the maintenance closet. So the idea with this proposal is to have Civil and Environmental Consultants, Inc. They are planning to come in and really look at this holistically and kind of open up in two different ways. One, they're gonna see if there's a way to possibly rebuild this basin or reconstruct it or reconfigure it in a way, or check with MSD to see when we built this building, where we were when it comes to how much stormwater we had stored for this building. Since we're LEED certified, there is a good indication that we might have stored an excess amount of water on site. So that can give us some leeway too, to maybe make it smaller, push it away, reconfigure it to push it towards the drive aisle out there. But the other side of it would be potentially relocating the storage altogether, which is somewhat what we're leaning towards. And the whole purpose of Civil coming in and doing this work would be for them most likely to relocate it. And something that's being discussed, and this is where the building committee will come in, and eventually this committee will have to weigh in on this as well, is that there's discussion and a possibility, after just speaking with MSD, that there could be some advantages to combining the City Hall parcel that we have here. Right now, when you look at City Hall and the Village Green, you've got 3 actual legal parcels. Village Green itself, 6 acres total, but 3 acres and 3 acres. So you got a parcel there, and then you have the parcel that makes up City Hall. If we were to combine all 3 parcels into one and have it one municipal site, we're looking into it. There may be some downsides, but on the upsides, there would be an ability to really control for stormwater upstream, which is actually further west. We could find a place really kind of in the trees, and if you look at the site, in the southwestern portion of the site, you might have to remove some trees, but at the end of the day, you could build some stormwater storage upstream, which then would allow us to be much more flexible down here, because if it's one site, they're only using one calculation. And as long as we're storing enough water upstream, they may be willing to let us get rid of that altogether and have it relocated upstream. So there's a lot that's gonna have to be played into this. But this is that first step to get them to evaluate our current basin out there, really get to the bottom of what's the problem, and then give us a determinative, here's the solution plan list, including evaluating whether or not we should combine the parcels. And then last but not least, setting us up so then we can start actually, engineering a fix to the problem. This is one of those things where problem isn't gonna go away. We keep patching up that side of the walls here, and it tends to keep leaking. So right now, we have no active leaks on that side of the wall. But with 2 different instances happening in the last 10 years, it's definitely a concern.
Showers.
Your analysis, did you say the playground also as a parcel?
So the playground would be located right now in the Village Green parcel, where that's being.
Be part of it though. right?
Yeah, it would be part.
Well, I just bring that up because with the latitude scenario, if it's correct or not correct, there is a concern of runoff getting down to the playground, I believe. So I don't know if,
They were gonna discharge onto the city property.
Yeah.
We said
So they-
that.
Couple things there. They requested postponement, which was fulfilled by the Planning and Zoning Commission, as you saw yesterday, but they have redesigned it to supposedly not have that no longer be discharging directly on the site. Let's see more to come. That said, this actually raises a bigger question that's being looked at, and why it's important to get them on board here. And they're also helping us with the stormwater control for the playground structure, because what you're gonna have is a concrete slab, and then you're gonna have an impermeable rubber surface that goes up. That's actually the playground structure itself, but they're gonna count it as practically a roadway anyway, so we're gonna have to account for that. The same goes for, City Hall redesigning this, and then not to mention, eventually, we're gonna want to kick in the Main Street extension too. So you've got 3 different city projects all taking place in the same area. And then also when you put in that there's a development proposal on that western portion of this site that we're looking at, there's a lot of stormwater considerations to take into account. And the idea from the department is getting ahead of it in the sense of the more water we can get away from this building, the better. We do have some space on the park property. We might have to use it, is really where it's coming down to, but we want to get a consultant to confirm that. But there's anything from our resident engineer here, I would be more than happy to oblige, and know that he did the work getting them on board.
Yeah, again, I think the key point with this consultant is they're doing the work for the all-inclusive playground. So it's just essentially doing the same thing for a bigger picture, a bigger piece of property, so.
Right. Okay, just didn't know if it would, if we needed to take in latitude in consideration with all of this.
Not as
Maybe it's being adjusted now.
So that would, not as of yet, I would say, if it were to be approved, and that could be something that planning and zoning, that additional information could be requested for that project. Main thing though, is we want to avoid, at least, we have to kind of let that work out in its own legal process through planning and zoning, and we almost don't want to make the assumption that they're automatically gonna have the development or not. We're gonna they know about it, this consultant knows about it, they definitely know about it for the playground that they're working on too. But they're also kind of waiting to figure out what's gonna happen there.
Okay. Thank you.
But at the development review committee for that project, it was very clear that nothing was gonna go further as long as they were gonna do the water dumping onto city property. So I know they're holding to come back to planning and zoning, but that was really clear in that review meeting. Cliff was on there.
It was clear too at the planning and zoning commission.
There's no dumping your water onto the park area, so.
It's been that has been clearly communicated to them, and they have proposed that there's some changes there that they no longer directly discharging, but that's yet to be seen. It's been postponed, and we'll have to see when it comes back.
Let's look at those when they.
I'll make a motion and we go with the recommendation to get these consultants in.
All right, Mr. Marshall makes a motion, Ms. Diane seconds it. Any discussion on the motion?
Discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I saw a cost component for the evaluation part.
Yeah, oh, sorry, is that a question, Mr. Mayor?
No? Yeah. For the cost consideration for the evaluation, has there been any range order magnitude of what we've just discussed as what they think the most plausible solution set includes
For how much it's gonna cost to fix it?
to fix it?
And
I'd like just to know that they are throwing something at the wall that we don't become embarrassed by recommending this evaluation that turns out to be recommending something inordinately out of scale with what the problem is.
they haven't tied a direct number down to it, but if we move the rain garden, we have to rebuild it. Obviously, we're gonna have to do that for the playground in some fashion. We could see some cost savings there because the idea is to possibly store the water in a way on the park site. That's the long-term view of this, is to store it upstream on the park site where you're getting more value and more, I guess, credit for putting it upstream. If you combine the two parcels, we possibly might be building this basin in the first place for the playground, but we might be able to add capacity to it that then makes up for the amount of water we store right here. And you're already building it, it's gonna probably add some costs, but I will say, we have not gotten a direct estimate. They did provide the geotechnical forensic study provided an understanding of what we could do to the existing basin to make it more suitable. It didn't have a cost associated with it, but we're talking probably upwards of, I would say at the least like $100,000. And that's if we were just reconstructing it, not relocating it.
But perk my ears.
I think the point is though, if we were going to do it, now would be the time to do it because we would do it in corporate playground, so it'd be the most cost-effective time to approach that problem.
Whatever recommendation we make or whatever we just do to say, okay, let's approve it, whatever they say. What I'd like to be able to communicate to the council, for them not to put it off another month, would be to go through and flesh out these things. We got a $40,000 bogey over there fixing this thing. But if we combine it with this over here in a timely manner, we're looking at $100K, which is actually smarter than spending 40 over here and 99 over there. But that's the type of thing that it seemed like this could really carry a lot better weight to make a much more, a much less of a kicking the can down the road another month at a time, as we hear sometimes mentioned.
This is what they will definitely do for us. This is what this contract, I would say, would be more so for. It would be for them to come in, study our current basin, figure out what the solution would be, give us a kind of a conceptual cost of what we would do with, if we moved it into the playground over that area, or if we reconstructed it, what those cost differences would be, and then it would give a clear example of what direction we want to go. That's the whole idea. This is actually not for the final design and engineering of a project. It's to investigate and come up with the best solution and possibly find cost efficiencies by moving it to another site.
All right, I promise the last thing I'll throw in is, can we add in the motion that they promise they're gonna come back with this bogey figure by next meeting that we can then give to the council to make an action? Because it's kicking spring and we're gonna be kicking construction open pretty soon here.
When you say bogey, are you talking about that same thing you just said about the
Yeah.
cost?
What
I think he's just saying, basically, I think you, correct me if I'm wrong.
go ahead.
How long will it take for them to do this study?
How long before we get an action for council action? One more meeting, 3 more meetings?
It won't be immediate, but it,
Well, I would say one meeting might be a little aggressive, but we can certainly push for that and see if we can make that happen.
well, we do know that they are currently, I mean, the playground project itself is of utmost importance. We're trying to get that out the door as quickly as possible too. So I mean, I think nailing them down to 30 days would be pretty tough to do the full analysis and come
Let's
back with a
threaten them with
report.
30 days, so they'll give it to us in 60, because I don't wanna put off the park kickoff, which. you
That,
mentioned.
and just so you know, to that, this project will be tied in, but we wouldn't let that interfere with our project timeline for the playground, so.
We saw how unrelated Bombshell was with work that was way out of.
Marshall.
I just would like to see them be able to put in writing that the initial building was faulty. There's no pipe in the ground.
If that's true, if that's what they find. I mean, I
I
agree.
know there's no pipe there.
There is no pipe and there
I've
appears to
been
be
through
no
the
gravel.
blueprints 3 or 4 times. I just, this whole thing is dragging us another year now, and now we're over 10 years. Oh, well, we're gonna go sue the different people. We haven't been able to come back to say, and somebody, oh, it's $5 million, it's 3 million. We don't know, but it's not getting any better. And I'm all in favor of doing the park thing, but this is a serious issue. And now we're in a year and a half, and we're not any further along than we were before. So I just hope that we're coming out of there with some acknowledgement that there were steps that were not done properly when this thing was built. And if it's nothing more than, I'll go get my old buddy Elliot Davis and we'll do a big interview on it.
So I have two questions, and I don't know, Rick, they might be for you. One, this proposal is dated December 10th and it's a 30-day
Yeah.
date. Did we assume we got their permission or whatever it is to extend the proposal out?
I haven't asked him, but I would rarely find that to be an issue.
Okay. The other question I have, and I'm all in favor of this. In fact, I mean, I would just suggest, it's not my job, but I would suggest, Tom, this falls way underneath your spending threshold. I would have just approved this without asking us, to be honest. I mean, I get you wanna try to understand the scope of it.
Well, it's more so that where this comes in, I know the expenditure threshold isn't there, but it's more so talking about combining the different parcels to allow us to be a little bit more creative with the design.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's gonna be a council action at the end of the day.
combining the parcels as a council action.
Yep.
But if we get, what I would suggest is by getting this data, then that helps the council to go, well, this makes sense to combine these two things. Again, we're not trying to influence people to do that, but this just is another data point for people to go, yeah, I understand how this all lines up now. That's just me. I would only also mention, and I don't know if it's possible because it's across the street and all those kinds of things, do we need to factor in the garage at some point in this as well, as that will be a city parcel?
Not for a decent amount of time. The SID can technically operate till 2040.
Okay,
So
great. So we don't have to worry
yeah,
about
there's a lot of time before we'd have to factor that.
Okay. Then, any other discussion points? Okay, last piece, are we gonna have to have any other studies after this before we start figuring things out, Rick,
No,
do you
this-
think, or this is gonna be the plan?
Well, again, this is not for design. of
I know that.
So there would be an.
But I'm saying like, this is going to inform the design, we're not going to come up with some other thing that we gotta look at.
Yes,
Yeah, correct, I don't.
this is them coming up with a solution based off that report we had earlier too, so we would be designing whatever their solution is if we agree with it.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments?
Just the motion that we're gonna be voting on includes Councilman Marshall's thing about the pipe. correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would assume, and this could be incorrect, I think, I'm with you on this too, Ed, but I mean, I would assume they're gonna come back with a complete assessment of what is going on.
Sure.
And I mean, I have no idea if they're able to assign
Oh, we're not assigning blame.
blame, but I mean, I think
but
saying
you're
that
just
these things are
making an
components not here.
observation.
No,
Makes sense.
but I mean, it's so obvious. We have this problem there. It's, oh, we don't know why it's there. The building wasn't done right.
Right,
And
that's
the people who signed off on it were so concerned about being lead building, they didn't fix the drains.
Yeah.
Or they didn't take the clay out from underneath the building. I mean, everything that we said going into this thing they were supposed to do, nobody watched anything. And we just did this gigantic overrun. And, you know, it's been 10 years and, you know, people complained about the old city hall. This is a bigger problem and a lot more money tied up in it, so.
So outside of the motion being to accept this plan that you guys are proposing, which I think is a good plan, is it helpful or necessary for us to include some type of language to just say to get this as quickly as we can get it?
Yeah, that'd be, I mean, we could take that.
Whatever that means.
It doesn't have to be included in the motion, but we can definitely.
You get that that's the
We get
gist.
the- we
Okay,
get
great.
this.
Perfect.
So everybody's good on the motion?
Yes,
You're
it was
good.
doing as
You're good?
possible.
You okay with this?
All right, we'll try this the first time around. All those in favor of passing the consultant plan forward, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that one passes unanimously. Excellent. That brings us to the review of advisory boards.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. Tonight, we've got a little bit of an extension of what we've been doing recently. The last couple meetings, we've gone through and broken down almost took every commission, committee, and board that we have that's active in our city, especially the advisory board, city councils. We'll get to that, but obviously it's may not be even considered for major changes other than possibly the term limits, et cetera. But the composition or anything like that is not up for debate. But all the other advisory boards, the question was, what is their legal reasoning for being there? What's their importance? Is there something in the way of us making modifications that the council were so to wish that? Also just any things that the city itself, is there any charter restrictions that we might have tied to ourselves? One that we've talked about here is the appointment term limits that we have for appointed officials, obviously for elected officials. That was one reason to do it, but then it got tacked on that appointed officials also have that same rule. And that's something to take into consideration. That's something I wanted to bring up because we can consider that for all appointed official roles. I think, especially as we get into a charter review here next year or so, could be something to discuss specifically for the appointed side, because that's always been the issue, is finding enough folks and not just doing a rotating basis, but finding enough new folks to be able to bring them on and have them work in that role for a decent amount of time. So that was the first phase of this, was to really break out the legal function and the basis for establishing each individual commission, board, committee. And then we took it a step further after the committee gave input at the last meeting to break out each individual commission, board, committee into a tier. We're just gonna call them advisory bodies, into tiers. So tier one, 3 different tiers. Tier one being, really can't make changes. It's kind of locked in. You could make changes to certain things such as, maybe there's a meeting frequency discussion, or maybe you want to have a discussion about a liaison that serves there, but you're not going to change the firm composition and overall the structure, their powers and duties that are established per the code and sometimes the charter. What typically does, what kind of gets that defined is that quasi judicial function. I think that's really important to note here. When you think about some of our, some of these tier ones that I've listed out, the department's listed out in this report, you'll note that the city council, it does perform quasi judicial functions, especially for appeals, business license appeals, et cetera. There are some planning and zoning matters that end up there too, that they serve a judicial function. I'll just go through, that's actually just tab committees to the tier ones. The administration, public works, and the planning and parks committee, a little different, don't have that quasi judicial function, but they do oversee the 4 major departments that make up the city. And I almost think that city clerk somehow can fall kind of under the umbrella of administration, since the duties do get covered in this meeting as well. But the reason why those are tier one, obviously they're made up of 8 council members. And then also the most important component is they oversee and approve the capital improvement budgets for right of way. And then the planning and parks committee approve capital improvement for parks and trails. And then also overseeing pretty much the 4 departments of staff that make up the majority of the budget. So there really is an ability and an important ability for these committees to be able to lock in and deal with a lot of the issues that are gonna come and rise to the city council level, but kind of be that first response to it. So I think, based on the department's perspective, they're tier one because of who they oversee department wise and how much resources they direct on. Planning and Zoning Commission meets that tier one threshold because of their quasi judicial function and also the fact that they are locked in as an established group and advisory board for the council because they serve that role to effectuate our zoning law. And if we were to give up our Planning and Zoning Commission, that would put us into tight legal scrutiny. And not only that, you could very well not be able to have the zoning that we have, our land use code that would be very important to keep. Same goes, and this is piggybacking off the Planning and Zoning Commission, but the Board of Adjustment component, just as important, they go hand in hand. If you have a Planning and Zoning Commission to review and implement your zoning code, you have to have a mechanism for variances or requests to kind of go the other way. So that is required too. You have to have that. We actually have a court reporter that does the minutes for each of those meetings. It is treated as a court function. It's one of the only meetings that the council doesn't actually have the ability to override that decision they make. It goes to a judge if there is something that gets challenged. So I wanted to call that out. Board of Ethics meets as needed. All these other meetings that we talked about, they do meet more regularly, but Board of Ethics is more of a component to have because it's better to have it when you need it than to need it and not have it. We used to have quite a few more meetings. We've added in a component, it's an important note. That's a little different than we had previously. We now have, if there's a charter complaint, if there's an ethics violation complaint about, a staff member or elected official more specifically, that goes now to a individual attorney that reviews the complaint and finds its merit and see if there's actually any weight behind it prior to calling in the ethics commission and then starting to break into an actual case and then talking about what those next steps might be. It's great to have this committee. It needs to be a tier one because if you ever needed that to be there, you need to have it for that quasi judicial function, especially if you're talking about impeachment or if you're talking about some type of disciplinary action towards an elected official. Going into the remaining tier one, the last one we have, and there's not much the city council can do to change the makeup or the committee, I guess, or the board itself is the CID. I wanted to include it just because it does have staff time implications. It does have implications on how we have to spread our time out as staff. But at the same time, it is created by, the indentures are going to be retired here shortly, but it's really developed by the council's initial approval. And then also, there's the annual review of its budget by the council, but it's really more of a comment section versus actually implementing that change. What really governs the overall CCID is the agreements that were made between all the property owners that participated at the beginning of it. That's what will govern it till about 2040 is when we're anticipating the property and sales tax would be able to be retired. So we wanted to include that as a tier one because we really can't do all too much to change it. But just as another important note, if we were to go ahead and say we don't want to have those meetings anymore, which they meet 3 times a year typically unless special meetings needed. If we were to change that, we would be effectively losing, decent amount of money in property tax and almost $90,000 in sales tax revenue that's generated. So, I wanted to make sure to bring those up. Those are tier one. Really can't open the box there on those. If anybody disagrees, we can have the discussion, but those will be very difficult to change. If they were to be changed, we would have some far-reaching implications. Now we get into a little bit more of the discretionary side, tier 2 and tier 3. Let's do a quick, I'll explain the difference between the two. It's a little bit, between them is a little gray, but there are some things you can look out for. One, an easy one, doesn't have to be, but being established per city code is an important factor. I also included in here that you can be established by city code or possibly by another mechanism, but it kind of automatically starts getting you considered for tier 2 if you are part of the code, because we'll have to change code in order to do it. You'll need an ordinance on the books. The other side of it would be more so the load of the board that's actually taking what they're taking on, what they're covering. And then really the most important piece here was that if we did have the actual committee, board, or commission modified, a tier 2, you can almost think of it like this, and this is what we did as an exercise. If you changed the way they were going to function or you eliminated them, then you would have to take the powers, duties, or responsibilities that are assigned in the city code and make sure those are attributed to another board, commission, committee, or council explicitly, meaning the duties that are outlined for that board are so important that it's listed out independently in code. That's a great way to kind of look at it, because as you start reviewing some of the code, you can see some of these examples that, may not rise to the level of, like an administration public works committee where a lot of financial matters come through before they reach the council. Or planning and parks, same could be said for planning our events, et cetera. But where it does come into play is, for different committees, like our economic development committee, for instance, it does have a decent arm there in the sense that it oversees a lot of the economic development activities we have, and it does play a role in the planning efforts for different park events and different events more generally. But one thing that we looked at, that was a tougher one because it is in code and it is made up of council members. So it is, you would think that would naturally knock it up to a tier 1. But where we had some issue there was that within the economic development, we looked back on past agendas and really studied what items were coming out. And what we found was there were a lot of really meaningful discussions happening there. But we found after it came out of EDC, it wasn't going always directly to council. A lot of the times it had to go to planning and zoning. And some other times it actually had to go to planning and parks because it might be a park event. So we saw a lot of those coinciding responsibilities there, and also seeing a lot of work that gets passed to another subsidiary committee. And we wanted to make sure we at least noted that. That's why it's more hanging on a tier 2. The same can be said for the Historic Preservation Commission. They do meet monthly as well, and they are established via ordinance. They serve, the one somewhat quasi-judicial matter that they do serve for us is if there is a demolition, they serve a role in as much as they do go tour the site, they make notes on it, they try to work with them, but overall, the council still has to approve the demolition at some point. Unless there can be an argument for illegal taking. So there's a little bit of a stretch there, but it still does have that quasi judicial function. They also are responsible for keeping our certification as a historic friendly city. And then going just through the line here, we had tier 2 as well with Celebration Commission. We found that a lot of that work, it is a lot that goes into that, the sponsorships, theme, et cetera. But we also wanted to just note that a lot of that also is discussed at the Planning and Parks Committee as well. We just wanted to at least make that note. If there was something that somewhat overlapped, that's where you started sliding down to tier 2, even if you were established per code. The Architecture Review Board, that was also determined as tier 2. It is pretty crucial in assigning, not assigning, but effectuating our design standards in town center, and also any kind of commercial building outside the town center. But an idea that was discussed, and when we made a change more recently, we changed the makeup of that committee, of that board, and we actually made it a little bit more flexible to allow the city to hire a consultant and a architect to serve on the board if we're not able to find a resident that meets the requirements. Because I think the most important part of the Architecture Review Board is to have architects with that experience, because they're really weighing in on the overall look and feel of commercial development, or more importantly, we have the Reserve at Wildwood, where we've had some things go through architecture review. They're determining how 115 homes are going to look in our city. So there's some importance there, but there also could be a discussion where architectural review could be absorbed into something like planning and zoning, which does somewhat get discussed. But maybe it's you assign an architect to that job. You have a retained architect, and then maybe they report to the Planning and Zoning Commission for these things. It becomes its own agenda item. There's some ideas, not necessarily endorsing these, but we had to look at it that way for when you're tiering them out. If we made a change, is there a way to make a fix and work around it? If there's not, it was tier 1. If there was, but it kind of caused a hamper and a problem, it was tier 2. And if changes could be made and really wouldn't affect all too many operations other than legally anyways, then it was considered tier 3. So then the last one here for tier 2, we got into Board of Public Safety. This is established per code. It does have listed in there the duties and responsibilities of overseeing the police department or a police contract, in this case, police contract, advising on the individual developments for safety reasons. We do have also the looking at our traffic schedule is mostly what they do. The component that was noted here when we were going through the review, if the council were to make changes to this board, the one recommendation that we would have is to still have a mechanism for having that open dialogue with the captain and a representative from Metro West Fire Protection District. That is one thing I think with the Board of Public Safety that's pretty beneficial when we have an item come up, doesn't necessarily have to be a board at all times, but if we have an item that comes up that does have a safety component to it, making sure that those emergency responding partners have at least a voice, even if it's a non-voting role like they are now. Wanted to point that out, but overall, a lot of the work that happens at Board of Public Safety, a lot of it that doesn't necessarily get transferred over to admin PW, but it in theory could. So that, once again, it was one of those things where we'd have to make some pretty big changes to the code, but it wouldn't necessarily, stop us short immediately. Okay, that's tier 2. Sorry to go through all these in so much depth, but wanted to really explain the rationale here from the staff's perspective. Development and Zoning Review Committee, I have this listed as a tier 3 just because I couldn't find a way to not have it be tier 3, but the department, and speaking with individuals from the staff side and also some from the business side, this is a very critical board that we have in the city. It was introduced back in 2017. I think we've saved developers. I've actually had a developer mention this, that it saved them a couple $100,000 because they were told, just flat out couldn't do something. Instead of having to go in and do the design and engineering and work towards an official submittal, they're able to typically get a preliminary concept and at least run the rough edges to really some key decision makers before it really hits, and we have to do public hearings and whatnot. And we're able to kind of shape not only to improve the development that's being proposed for the city to make it better for us, but also to make it realistic for them too, to make standards and set standards up front so that they're not catching issues right as they go to the first Planning and Zoning Commission meeting where they've already invested a good deal of money. So I did want to just note that the department would not recommend any changes to Development and Zoning Review Committee. I think that's actually one of our really good groups that we have. I wanted to note some of these other ones you'll note too are usually they were designed for a specific purpose or they're a subgroup of another committee. So that's really another distinguished piece here, is that it is groups that were made for specific task-oriented items. So typically they'll have a sunset. And if you go through these, in theory, a lot of these could be absorbed by other committees. Just looking at master plan, you could have those be covered by standing council committees if you needed to, but we've always done it that way where we had a citizen oversight group do it. Ad hoc building committee, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done at this building, so I think it's important, but there is a time that's set to this. Once the building is, we correct some of these issues, it will have a natural sunset. All-inclusive playground fundraising group, that one will have a sunset, obviously, once we start building the playground itself. Landscape and Planning Subcommittee, we actually will not be having any more meetings of them, but it's a subcommittee of planning and parks. And then lastly, the Watershed Erosion Task Force, which was created for a very specific purpose, collected the data necessary. Now we're in a construction phase. And at this point, we're most likely going to be having their roles and responsibilities somewhat absorbed by the Planning and Parks Committee, and also the Administration Public Works Committee is kind of a joint topic for coverage. The department would not necessarily recommend modifications to tier 1, but we could confirm that tier 2 and tier 3, we can explain if there's any specific direction tonight from the committee. We can explain what steps would be needed for each if there's any changes that the council's looking to make tonight. Available for any questions.
Any questions?
Taxing district, will the new apartments and retail fall into that taxing
No,
district?
the new one over here, Mia Rose.
Theater's not in it now, right?
No, so the boundary for it starts across the street from here, so almost think of it where the parking garage is, go down to Walgreens and then to 100, it's that little corner there, and it includes also the retirement home.
But the corner of Taylor and the south side is not in there.
No, so City Hall is not included,
Several times that was brought up in discussion. They wanted to add it because they wanted to put a steakhouse in there and other places in order to do this.
so there was discussion for that, and and it could happen, but if they were to be added, then not only would you have the folks that own the current properties would have to agree to that, but then the individuals that own the properties outside of it would have to agree to possibly, well, they'd be signing up for a property tax and a sales tax, so
I know, too bad.
where they,
But we gave them, what, 3.5 million? I would think that's pretty fair, but
No,
anyway.
no, he means the other people, because we just wound part of that down, so they'd have to re-up the whole thing again.
yes, well, okay.
No.
right? Like like, cause where Starbucks and all that stuff is, they would have to agree
Yes,
to the new
the,
terms.
all the owners of the real property would have to agree to kind of accept a new person into the club, and then that party would have to accept, I'm going into the club as well.
So
Interesting.
We certainly try.
I just think I mean, again, it was always negotiated back when we did it, I was here the first time. And the intent was, as those lots would fill out, and I can remember Greenberg and Cohn asking about being able to come into that because they wanted to put the restaurant in there and all this other stuff. And then suddenly, when there's something coming in, you don't hear any more discussion about it in order to do it. That's fine. So I guess a couple questions I had, or I'll let somebody else go, and I took my first one.
All right, Cliff?
Do you state, sorry, is this, maybe you can restate what we're actually trying to do? Is this just a review? Are we trying to consolidate, reduce when possible, or?
So, I would suggest, we've talked about this for a while, and now and so like Parks and Planning had this on their agenda. So what I would suggest is, I think the staff has done a great job of putting these components together, and we've done so, I think, really appropriately, appreciating the volunteer work that goes into all these committees. We're not necessarily trying to get away from that, but I do think from a planning perspective, like it would make sense to me to take this information that we have tonight and be able to put forth sort of the next part of that plan. And whether that then maybe goes, depending on how the timing works out or whatever, that might go to our next council meeting because everybody's talking about it already. Or if, or it kind of moves up to planning and parks, because at least based on what I saw, and I don't know, Tom, like correct me if I'm wrong, but planning and parks basically kind of endorsed what we already suggested, which is like, let's put these things into this kind of a tiered framework and we'll go from there. So in a way, just the way timing is lining up, we're kind of leading that conversation. So I think we can go with those next steps of that plan.
Well, just general observation, like, I know I brought up economic development before, but instead of maybe it's a little light, I would say, maybe there's more that could be rolled into that from the tier twos and eliminate some of those tier twos. And I would suggest that we really try to eliminate the tier threes and put them into something else.
Okay, that's good, sir. Mr. Mabry?
Yeah, I was wondering if we were getting into the stage of mince and dicing, and it sounds like we are,
We are.
without having anything that this is the stage we're at now. And we're getting down to cases and brass tacks, then go after them one at a time and have them captured by the scribe. And then you say, that sucks, that's horrible, we're not gonna do that. We say, that looks pretty good to explore further. Watershed Erosion Task Force, you take however many 8 or 10 or 12 or 75 people that were on that Watershed Erosion Task Force, now that we're done with the head scratching and brainiac stuff. And you take 3 of those members of somebody's choosing as advisors, as I've noticed that there is one advisor on the Historical Preservation Commission. And you take those 3 that you've chosen out of those, however many are on that task force, and they now become advisors, and they're invited in anytime name another tier 2 or tier 1
Well, it would-
that they apply to,
yeah, right.
and they're invited into that meeting to be advisors, either technically or by experience or by where they live. So that's one down for Watershed Erosion Task Force. And now the Erosion Task Force is now disbanded, except for those 3 advisors that are on call. How do you like that?
I think, that's
That's just one way to attack
yeah,
it.
that's a little bit of the way we would approach it anyways. I think we can hear some other thoughts. I might have an idea that kind of incorporates all of this stuff, but let's hear what everybody else has got. If anybody else has anything else they want to add.
Well, except that I agree wholeheartedly that all tier 3 need to be disbanded and their best parts and pieces need to be salvaged and either added to something else to make that car run faster, or maybe sold off to another group where their expertise individually and privately can be used in a tier 2 or a tier 1 for further skills. So we're just taking talent sets and reapplying them.
Can there be an official subcommittee of one of these or not?
Well, I think there can, so here's what,
It may not be the answer. I just didn't know if that's even possible.
Any committee can technically make a subcommittee of itself.
Yeah, so my thought on this, and I appreciate you guys doing the work, I know that this has taken a lot, so, you know, a lot of the tier 3 things, probably with the exception of the DZRC are pretty temporary or like really kind of as needed.
Projects.
Really, a lot of these are kind of as needed, so the suggestion that I would like, I'll throw out there is, you know, we have a very small handful of basically our tier 1 meetings that are, you know, very obligated for a variety of legal reasons. They need to happen at a certain cadence and all things like that. And I think that everybody agrees that those are where they should be. I would suggest that anything else, and even like Board of Ethics, as we said, like that's not something that meets regularly. That's a really an as needed thing. I would say Board of Adjustment is technically probably as needed. It just is needed more frequently.
We
Right.
meet monthly because we have to schedule the minute taker.
Yeah.
And legally you have to offer the opportunity, but if there's nothing on the agenda, it doesn't have to meet.
Yeah, so my thought is we take all of these things and then anything that isn't in that tier 1, whether it's economic development, historic preservation, you know, the Wildwood Celebration Commission is kind of more of like a seasonal thing. I mean, they meet a lot, but it's really important at a certain time of the year. Architectural review, Board of Public Safety, I mean, Rick does a great job of saying, hey, we don't really have anything to talk about this month or whatever it is, so we don't do it. So the thing I came up with was to preserve legally required bodies and meeting requirements. So whatever the state and all these and our charter and things say, those are the ones that need to stay. And then authorize everything as needed. And it is discretionary and then we just define what as needed is. So instead of just like saying, well, it's as needed, and then, you know, the chair or somebody goes, I think we need to have a meeting. Why? Because we haven't had a meeting in a while. Like, great. But, you know, as Mr. Marshall and I have had conversations, he's the chair of the ad hoc building committee, and we do need to have some conversations about what's going on. So there are kind of real things. So I think if we can, my suggestion is to if we can come up with as a group, what actually defines as needed, then we can allow the staff to apply that. And then that should free up a lot of the calendar work and things like that, because you know, we can fold up a lot of these things. I think we don't want to burn out volunteers the way we have them set up right now with the term limits as they currently are, which I think we certainly should fix for the boards and commissions and things. But a lot of this is a lot of these meetings, and what we found, I think, you know, I thought about this, I'm not picking on EDC, although we seem to do that a lot. Like we had our EDC meeting the last, when was that? A week ago, 2 weeks ago? And when I started thinking about even the light number of hours, if it was on the low end of the hours, that meeting cost the city $1,000 to have. And it was, in my opinion, although I'm a member of the committee and whatever, like that wasn't worth $1,000. And there's certainly a lot of meetings that we have that are probably not really technically worth that. And so if we can, that's not to say they aren't valuable in general, but at that specific time, I think we can do a better job of that. So I don't know, I mean, I guess my question would be, I guess, Tom, to you and Rick, since you're also, you know, our director on these things, like, is it better for us to go through each one of these things and say, we should get rid of this or change it this way, or to say, generally speaking, these things should be defined as needed. If they aren't needed anymore, like watershed can be just done away with more or less. And then give you guys the definition of what defines as needed. So it is not just sort of like
It would be helpful
up
to
to a
get,
feeling.
yeah, that part would be helpful, either one or the other, what you're just saying. Either have one where it's, you explain the as needed component, so it's very easy for us to apply. And then it's not, there's no question to whether it's kind of defining it. That's why it's needed, and that's why that frequency is needed. I think that's what we're getting at too, is the meeting frequency. But then the other side of it would be, if we were to go through these independently, I think that could, especially if the whole council weighs in on it, that I think that would carry some more weight with some, especially with the volunteers. If the staff has to enforce this portion of it, where it's like, hey, this is what as needed means.
No, I think, I mean, so I would say like my suggestion, unless you guys want to do something else, which is fine, like I'm happy, I can throw out some ideas of what as needed means. If we all come to an agreement, then the recommendation from us would be, this is what we think it should be, this is as needed. That then goes to the council, then everybody can figure out what they want to do, if that works or not, and then we go from there. That then should give you guys the direction, right, that you would need.
Yeah, and it would probably lead to a couple code changes, but it wouldn't be, if you're not totally eradicating some of these code required meetings, I think that'd actually be a pretty simple way to do it.
Okay.
Here's my question. So like Architectural Review Board meets the second Thursday of the month as needed. Like if there's no paces, then there's no meeting. So would these groups keep a date? Like, okay, it's the second Thursday. If it's not needed that month, you don't have a meeting. Or is it just like, we might, you know what I mean? Like, hey,
That's
we'll
always-
tell everybody when there is a need and we're gonna throw that in on a Tuesday and we might not meet for 6 more.
So, I mean, I would suggest, because we used to, I just, this is what Director Vunich and I used to do on the watershed thing. Like, I would say in that case, it has a place so that you know, people can schedule when, in advance, when they need to be there.
Okay.
But then we can define a period of time, so, you know, you shouldn't be hearing that you're having a meeting on Thursday, on Tuesday.
Right.
And so I think if we set this thing up very clearly, so in this case, you know, I've got like basically 5 things that would define what an as needed is. Then we can say, hey, based on, you know, number 4, this meeting is is needed and therefore it will occur at its normally scheduled Thursday timeframe. That's how I would probably set it up, but you know, that makes sense?
Yeah. I guess one of the things I'd like to see us look at is the whole term limit definition and what a term is needs to be cleaned up. Some are 3 years, some are 2 years, some are 1 year. Those got that way when we set it up and add more people to it. So in order to do that, the next year, this person got 3 years, 4 years. Or we go back and change the charter and take out all volunteer positions is not, initially, that's the way the recommendation came out of the charter review was elected individuals had term limits, no one else.
Right.
And Mayor Bowen thought, oh no, we gotta do it for everybody.
Yeah.
No, because you're gonna create, and now we know what the problem is. The mayor gets to appoint 104 people every 4 years. And so through that process, that doesn't mean, you know, and you do have to tell people, thank you for your service, I'm gonna appoint somebody else. You don't renew everybody in order to do it. But when you start putting those kind of term limits in, then you get, number one, you get people who can't meet those particular nights, they get on a committee, they never show up, then you need to add more people because you never get a quorum. So I think if we could go back and look at any of the ones, and I kind of agree with the bottom ones, but any of the marginal ones, and determine what are the lengths that where we have volunteers, and then what night are they meeting on? Because there's a lot of people, so I'd like to do that, I can't do Tuesday night, or I'd like to do that, well, that's, and we've had people, the treasurer and people on council get appointed and say, well, I'm never in town on a Monday night. Well, that's not gonna help you any. So part of it is to determine then of the volunteers and of those people that we say that position on historic preservation, whatever, is a 4-year term, then we don't have to change the charter, or we get the terms all synced up that way. We could still go back and change the charter and just state non-elected. The charter term limits are for elected officials only.
Yeah.
If you're not on the ballot to be elected, then it doesn't affect you. And then you'd have that opportunity. That's what we had intended to try to move forward. I still like to talk to Mr. Young because it left that committee that it was not gonna be the way it is.
Would it make sense maybe, would it make sense to maybe do both? Because the charter.
Yeah, that's
the
what I'm
charter
saying.
thing is not-
I think that's one way that you could tweak a lot of this. You can't do the charter this year. You have to do it on the ballot next year. And you can only do it 2 or 3 items on the thing to even get the people to vote for it. But I think what we could do is change the ordinance that controls the term. And then look at the wording in the charter when it talks about the term limits. And that reword, if I were recommending, the rewording would be elected positions.
So maybe then let's split this into 2 pieces, because I agree, and maybe that's just the second thing based on this part of that conversation. Does that make sense, Tom?
No, that makes sense.
Cause yeah, we'll pull somebody who's been an alternate,
Right.
then we put them on for a thing. Well, does that count as their years? Well, I mean, I don't think we've ever been really clear on it.
Yeah.
And it's all self-inflicted. We've done this to ourselves.
Look, you got something?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Can I do one more board of public safety?
Sure.
I've been on it several times. I still think that we're kind of missing the purpose of what's in there, but I just kind of resent the fact that we think Metro West should be on it, but we don't bring Eureka and Monarch into it. they each have a third of the city. And I think in all fairness, now, again, I used to go to their board meetings and find out because they will work with you. But one of our previous mayors did not want to work with them. And so then we kind of seen some of these challenges we've had. So if we are gonna do something on the Board of Public Safety, maybe once every 6 months, we have all 3 fire districts. We have the police, and then we have a safety focused meeting on updates, what's going on or how to do that. As another alternative, but I just think, and I just don't know, the codes are so different between the 3 fire districts, and they're separate taxing districts. So I think that if we're gonna do anything with it, we ought to keep in mind that those other 2 districts represent a big portion of the city as well, so.
It's a good idea.
All right. Anybody else? Do you guys want me to read these, the as needed definitions thought I had? Okay. So 5 components. A formal referral or request is made by the city council or a standing council committee. The city administrator or relevant department director requests advisory input on a defined action, proposal, or deliverable. A statutory, contractual, grant-related, or regulatory milestone requires review or recommendation by the advisory body. A quorum of the advisory body submits a written request for a meeting specifying the subject matter to be addressed. Or a project or initiative overseen by the advisory body reaches a defined phase requiring review, recommendation, or closeout. So like I would suggest, if we were to use like watershed as an example, we've passed the detention retention thing. So I don't know if it's necessary, but I would say the next meeting is just for us to go, we've completed what we're supposed to do. And now we're done. So those are the 5 ones I came up with. If there's other ones or different phrasing that you guys would suggest or like, obviously we can have that conversation. Do those items make sense to you guys, or is that too vague still?
Could you send that to Amy? I think a lot of those actually made a lot of sense. The referral by council. The department would request, if we're gonna go in that direction with those referrals, we may request from the council too to be very specific with the referral and be like, hey, here's when we wanted that meeting to happen, et cetera. We'd still have a placeholder on the calendar.
Yeah.
With these.
I would say I would almost apply, kind of like we've done with the board action review, like apply that same idea that like, if, for instance, if Ed wants to have a Board of Public Safety meeting, he can certainly make that request and he's gonna spell out why he wants, like, what is the item that we're talking about, not just let's get together. Not that I think he would do that, Ed, but I'm just saying like.
No, but I think in all fairness, we need to, these purviews are there, but we ought to be able to make sure the public knows if they wanna come. I mean, used to, that Board of Public Safety, people were lined up waiting to get in a meeting because they all wanted to stop sign in their subdivision.
Right.
Kind of past that now.
We got them all put up.
It was a long time.
Yeah. So I have it's a long motion. I'm happy to read it if that makes sense. And if somebody wants to change it or make it, we can do that. But it sounds like we're kind of going in the right direction on this thing. So the motion.
Confirm too, there's 2 components to this, right? That there's one, and just before we get into the longer motion, one is to look at the term limits for these advisory bodies and standardize them.
Mhm.
That's correct.
That'll be the second part of this.
Okay, just making
We
sure.
need to decide whether we think it should be 4 or 3 year.
Yes, I think we should do that, but let's,
Not do it right now.
we're gonna do this part first, I
I
think.
agree.
Okay, so here is the full motion, and assuming somebody likes it or whatever, I'm happy to email it to whomever needs it. All right. I move that the city council adopt the following policy clarification regarding the meeting cadence of city boards, commissions, committees, task forces, and advisory groups. Number 1, preservation of legally required bodies and meeting requirements. All boards, commissions, and committees whose existence, authority, composition, or meeting frequency is required by the city charter, Missouri state statute, or explicitly mandated by city code shall continue to meet in accordance with those legal requirements. Nothing in this motion is intended to alter, reduce, or waive any legally required meeting schedules, public notice requirements, or procedural obligations. Number 2, authorization of as-needed meeting cadence for discretionary advisory bodies. For advisory bodies, task forces, subcommittees, and working groups that are not subject to legally mandated meeting frequencies and whose functions are advisory, temporary, project-specific, or episodic in nature, the default meeting cadence may be designated as needed unless otherwise required by ordinance, resolution, or governing bylaws. That makes sense?
Yeah,
You good on that one so far?
I'm good on that one. It is, Yes, for right now, we might have to review it just to nail it down specifically, because some might be a little more gray area if it falls within that category, but.
I mean, not that I'm going to make this motion, but I would suggest that that would be anything that is outside of tier one.
Yep, I would agree with that, and then, yes, that's what I'm interpreting it as, and also the other thing is, like about the motion is you are saying if it's legally required, then this is kind of nullifying.
Yeah, it doesn't apply.
So.
Yep. So
realistically,
just
I-
so if somebody were to make this, just so you're clear, like the big ones, just stay the way they are with a couple of, because some of them are as needed basically already. And then the rest, it's sort of applying to the rest. Okay, so then definition of as needed. For purposes of city operations, as needed shall mean that a meeting is convened when one or more of the following conditions occur. One, a formal referral or request is made by the city council or a standing council committee. The city administrator or relevant department director requests advisory input on a defined action, proposal, or deliverable. A statutory, contractual, grant-related, or regulatory milestone requires review or recommendation by the advisory body. A quorum of an advisory body submits a written request for a meeting specifying the subject matter to be addressed. Or a project or initiative overseen by the advisory body reaches a defined phase requiring review, recommendation, or closeout. Those are the ones we already went on. Last little piece here. Transparency and public notice. All meetings convened under an as-needed designation shall remain subject to all applicable public notice, open meeting, agenda, and record-keeping requirements under Missouri law and city policy. And then administrative implementation and periodic review. The city administrator is directed to implement the clarification consistently across applicable advisory bodies and to periodically review meeting activity to ensure that advisory functions are being fulfilled efficiently, transparently, and in alignment with the city's governance framework. That's it. What does everybody think of that?
Just a comment,
Mhm.
as we look at these ones to make them more of ad hoc committees where they're being called for special meetings or special events, there's gotta be some way that we don't have to make the committee so big that you can't get a quorum. Because whatever comes out of there is just going forward as a recommendation. So I just question whether or not how important it is to have the task force with particular people serving on it if it's still gonna require coming back to another subcommittee.
I agree. So I think kind of like our idea or your idea of setting the term limit and what that actually should be. I think we should just say, unless this is mandated somewhere specifically, like, I appreciate the concept of getting everybody from each ward, but that's a lot of wards. And also, not everybody in a ward has a specific, either level of interest or understanding of what's going on. So I'm wondering if sometimes we're missing out on people. We lucked out in that because with Watershed, when we did our redistricting, Mr. Sturman had been in Ward 3 and he was our expert on where we were trying to get money from. And he got moved into Ward 4. And it just so happened that Carol, who was our co-chair, her husband got ill, so she dropped off. So he was able to stay. But had that not occurred, then it would have been a very weird scenario. And we would have lost somebody that really did know what was going on.
And that's the only concern, because if we kind of take away some of those big groups and quorums, part of the struggle I think they have is not only the term limit thing, but also getting enough people there. When they were adding all these people to historic preservation, I kept saying, why do you do that?
Mhm.
Because now they can't get a quorum. And it's like, well, we want to have a meeting, and then you look at, there's really not a whole lot to be on the meeting. So part of it has to be the fact that you don't want to wear out the volunteers. At the same time, you don't want to ask somebody to volunteer, and then in 4 years, they've never been called in.
Right.
And it's like the Board of Ethics, so people been on there and never called to a meeting.
Because we're also very ethical. We don't worry about this.
Yeah.
Okay, I like those points as well. I think we can talk that on this next thing. I'm happy to make whatever changes or suggestions you guys might have, or if somebody wants to make this very elaborate motion, I'm happy to send that over, however you guys want to proceed.
I think it's going the right direction.
All right, so you want to make the motion? All right, Mr. Marshall will
I
make
just
it.
can't repeat it back right now.
Okay, that's okay. That part we can handle. Mr. Marshall will make the motion. Tracy, you in second? All right, Tracy will second it. Any discussion on the motion?
Discussion.
Yes, sir.
Shall we, I hadn't seen in there the component of requesting of the staff that they propose or recommend or suggest or insinuate any of these bodies, which they just as soon see paper, because they really are a marginal value add for the time invested, not of the particular item, but the fact that every single one of these particular items requires a certain number of man hours to sustain, certain number of pieces of paper to always print off, certain number of placards to put on the desks of the people that have to be stewarding them. And that's they'll know what value add and what's not for their staff's time constraints. Give them that leeway to throw in their 2 cents worth.
So we might be able to add something to the motion that would fix this. My worry is, and my concern, and I could be wrong, I don't want to speak for you guys, but you know, I think our staff is cognizant and appreciative of the people that have volunteered to do this, and so they don't probably want to be the people that are pulling the trigger on some of these. But I do think if we were to shift these to this as needed thing and we put in an additional thing that just is a sunset clause that says, hey, if we aren't meeting at some level of efficiency, then this body just kind of naturally goes by the wayside and without a great deal of fanfare about it. Because I think what we might find, not that we wouldn't be able to do it with the Board of Ethics, that's like required, but in theory, that hasn't met for I don't know how long. And so it might be, not that we would do this, but that would be one that would make sense, that it just kind of.
Well, and technically, it should meet prior to every election, once the filing is done. They're supposed to review anybody who's formed a committee. They have to sit down and go through that, or those who didn't. We haven't had anybody run a competitive race that has a committee, but unfortunately, that's another one of those issues where that's what they're there for, is to review anything that was filed with, if they had a committee or spent any money. Should have been done when they did the mayor's race. I don't know if that was done or not, but I mean, that's just kind of, that's how it all existed in order to do that.
Taking a peek.
Can you let her know that this is what meeting this is?
Just one other comment. In any of these that we say would be on an as-need basis, maybe we ought to be thinking of a caveat that if it's not going to be made before the next meeting, that it'll go to the council without, or it'll go to one of the 2 subcommittees. So that way you don't get into, well, we can't get a date. Well, it's gonna go to the standing committee to move it forward without any recommendations, so that you're not locked down. To say, well, we can't do that now, it'll be another month. I think that's part of the frustrating part.
Okay, tell me if this makes sense with your concern on limiting some of these. So we can add a new section 6, which is any advisory body, task force, subcommittee, or working group that is designated to meet as an as-needed basis and does not convene a meeting or produce a formal recommendation, report, or documented action within a period of 12 consecutive months shall be subject to administrative review. Following such review, the city administrator shall either 1, confirm that the advisory body remains necessary and recommend its continuation. 2, recommend reassignment of its remaining duties to another advisory body, standing committee, or staff function. Or 3, recommend that the advisory body be formally sunset, concluded, or dissolved, subject to any required city council action. No advisory body established by the city charter, Missouri state statute, or explicitly required by city code shall be subject to sunset under this provision.
Okay, can I respond?
Sure.
Immediately thought of Director Brown, Mr. Lee, you want to chew up another year of your staff having to man the house, man the pumps, sit in the seat for keeping any of these tier 2, tier 3s open? Is 12 months the best time, or can you get this knocked out in the next fiscal quarter? Just giving it.
From your motion, if it
Number 6
remains
item.
inactive for 12
Number
months.
6.
Yeah, so
If it's relevant.
But that's only, I think what he's talking about though is this is after these changes are effectuated. If it's inactive for 12 months after that point, then that.
yeah, so if we were to switch it to as needed right now, because the whole idea was to try to free up the calendar anyways, that was our concept with this thing. So if we went to as needed, then the staff is not necessarily going to be doing those meetings outside of perhaps this next one, once it gets passed, to explain whatever change might go on. And then we would know from that point, once that action takes place, then that 12-month period starts to kind of kick in.
I'm talking about the overhead to keep the lights on, to keep the lease up, and to keep the offices open, and to keep even a fraction of each one of your employees who are already overworked with multi-hats all over. I just keep getting the sense when I'm dealing with anyone here that they're sharing their time with me with 5 other responsibilities they're not able to attend because they're giving me 100%. And they got 4 other 100% that now they gotta catch up with. I just keep getting that every time I talk with anybody here. And they're too pleasant to level with me.
I can at least break it out this way, that we have a lot of day-to-day responsibilities that have to be handled every day. And we have this is a good way to look at it. We have at max capacity about 26 employees, one of those being part-time for the court. Of these committees, all these committees here you see, the reports, research, unless a consultant is being paid to do a report for us. All the reports, research, minutes, actually exclude the minutes, but all the actual substance, the information that goes in these packets, and a lot of the organization that goes in, formatting goes in it. I would say about 10 individuals on staff are responsible for doing that, and of that, probably 5 of them do the majority of it. And it's a lot of director's work, and there's help that comes down the pipe, but just for context, there's about 16 or so committees that we have, and about 5 people are pushing out all the materials for all said committees while doing their day-to-day jobs.
Well, would it help? I mean, I'm not asking you to necessarily start crossing these off at the moment, but I think to Mr. Mabry's point, would it help you to do something like this and just identify ones right now that you know? I mean, we know Watershed is basically
Yep.
being closed up.
Yep.
So are there other ones that fall within that threshold where it's pretty clear that like, yeah, out of these 16, 6 of these are not going to be
Yeah,
eliminating?
I can point out a couple of the tier 3s for sure. The landscaping and planning subcommittee, that one's practically resolved itself. It's more so just waiting for the final document to come out. DZRC I'd actually argue to keep.
No, that one, I mean, obviously,
MP 26 will be done, I believe, by latest June. We're hoping to be done by May. Building committee, I think we've got a couple things we gotta knock out first before we tuck that one away. It's pretty
Will it take a
easy.
year?
Yeah, that one's probably gonna take a year.
Okay, then there's one that's gonna take a year. But then the other one you said before that, whatever it was.
Yeah,
the.
master plan will
master plan.
sunset itself.
That'll be a master plan and we can put it to bed for 10 years.
Yep, and then all-inclusive playground, the fundraising component, the good news there is that we don't have as many meetings. It was really a lot of work on the front end, getting the meetings to kind of assign out. We do check-ins, and Melanie and a couple of the planning staff help with that. But originally, that meeting group was a lot of the work on the front end, because we had to kind of teach people, here's what we need to do, here's what the goal is, but now it's kind of plug and play. It's more so people, hopefully, making connections on the outside on behalf of the city, saying, hey, here, teaching them about our project, getting them to the link, and then hopefully soliciting some donations.
So that doesn't require any more meetings though, right?
It does only if there's like a check-in. I know one discussion they were having was, do we need to have we're gonna have it for the opening of the Village Green, of course, some type of donation mechanism there, and maybe set it up where it's for donors, you can have a special viewing of it or something like that. I don't know, that they're thinking about that. But if there were to be we're gonna schedule a special fundraising event, then that idea would need to probably request a meeting, and that's gonna happen kind of how you've already been saying, by having a couple folks or the chair reach out and say, let's go ahead and do a meeting. But that one's not meeting on a rolling schedule.
Okay.
So I would say that one,
So if we went up to
Kind of
tier 2, then what in there?
tier 2, it gets a little bit more tricky. But I think there could be some changes made. I think HPC has to somehow remain, or it need to be absorbed because of the demolition provision. And also the certification, I think we would have to answer the question of how much we value that component. Economic development, I think a lot of that,
How much do we value that? I mean, I'm not,
I
I'm not
think that's
trying
a
to
fair
be-
question.
but what is that? We're in a lead building that doesn't do anything for us. I'm not saying that the historic preservation thing isn't important, but I don't know what it effectively does for us.
Yeah, so recent notable accomplishments would be, kind of gearing up for the Route 66 celebration for 100th anniversary. But then the more recent tangible item was the Railroad to Freedom grant that they were able to retrieve, which then resulted in some,
Yeah, but do you need the certification to get that?
No, it helps with the grants, for sure.
Sometimes you have to have a committee
Yep.
that needs to, like, there's.
If you're gonna do
standard
it,
that
to
they-
try to get any of those grants, you're gonna have to have an established.
Yeah, but if we move it to as need, it's not like it goes away, it moves as needed and it's just not needed every month or whatever.
And clean up the terms,
And I think the other thing too could be, you know, for that group, I mean, it could be something as simple as, you know, if there's a major milestone, but also if there's a demo permit that comes in, then hey, that's when it gets triggered, and that's an easy one to trigger, and that could be in the code, like, hey,
And
anytime.
that
a
might
demo
be where we
happens-
have to look at the number of people because, you know, you might need to reduce some of that.
Yep, and and maybe it's something where you submit that demo permit, we will schedule it within 30 days of receipt, something like that.
I was on there for a year and I went out to 4 of those.
Yeah.
All 4 of those, they tore them down.
That,
And, you know, to have people in there tell you if it's your property, well, we'd really like you to keep that staircase, we'd really, that's not ours. I mean, I just find it really frustrating to think. And then these people turn around and tear it down anyway. I mean, it's just a whole lot of tracking through snow and into something that's not really safe to say, well, yeah, we don't need to tear it down. So I agree, but I understand why they're trying to do it. But unfortunately, things like this building will be falling down way before those 150-year-old buildings are.
So, I mean, I'm, unless there's something, Tom, that jumps out to you, I'm looking at the tier 2, all of these, I would say, make sense that you could fall under that as needed, and some of them are just needed more frequently than others. I mean,
I would agree with that, and I'd agree with that. And the one that I wanna look at a little bit more closely, just to make sure, is the ARB, but I really don't think it's effectuating the land use code. At the same time, I still think some of those responsibilities could be absorbed by our planning and zoning commission, and I think it would behoove us, say we were to change that one wouldn't really necessarily fit the as needed model, it could. But I think the most important part about that committee is having a real architect that's on there that is helping guide, and is an architect that the council agrees with their style and with their past, like getting a portfolio and saying that is what we want our city to look like, and they obviously specialize in new urbanism
So
principles.
real architects don't want to serve it.
They don't, so that's where,
It's such a ego-driven group of people. I know a bunch of architects, they just won't do it because they come in there and other architects, well, we have to have hardy board. No, it doesn't say that. Well, that's what we want. And they override it to others. You know what? I'm an architect all day long. I have no desire to do that for the city. I live in the city, but I'm not gonna do that.
well, maybe then,
that's where the consulting part, I know that's not something we want to necessarily.
No,
legislate, but
actually,
maybe it's a
Forest Hills or Clarkson Valley. There was a guy who used to serve on our board who was an architect. But when they had something going on occasionally in Clarkson Valley, they would hire him as a consultant. And he was their architect, the city approved architect for a project that the department, they don't have a big department, but they wanted to do. So I mean, we kicked that around a lot. Because honestly, there's a lot of bad things that have happened, in my opinion, in 30 years because of the architect review committee.
well,
So maybe we are, and now the department is much better. Before, we didn't have anything when we were doing the town center, all that stuff, and we made this grandiose ideas that everybody wanted ceiling to floor glass. And then we can't figure out why nobody wants to build in here. But in that particular case, since we've gotten that far along and the staff, I think, has got a pretty good understanding, we've defined all the codes. Do we really need it? Let the staff deal with it and then let the architect review. If we have to bring in a consultant in, do that. Instead of having, the people that are on there now aren't architects.
That has been the biggest issue, is finding a professional architect to serve. on
And
the
there
board.
are some good ones, they're not gonna do
well,
it.
okay, so then I would suggest this, if
Very fair.
if this makes sense. I think that the general motion still makes sense. It sounds like ARB has a question on how we wanna do that, so I would say if we apply this to everything that's here with kind of special call outs for architectural review. I'm just thinking historic preservation, but only so we can just understand whatever this, like, I get it, but like, just let's have a real definition of what that certification does for us. Great. Wildwood Celebration Committee, I feel like they probably do this more or less already, because at some points they're gonna need to have more frequent meetings than others.
They do, and they meet monthly, but they typically start stacking up a little bit as we get closer to Celebrate Wildwood. But overall, I mean, I think that one, that one's a tricky one too. It's gonna,
Maybe what we say is this, because we had this conversation, I think you were, well, somebody was in there, at economic development, like. the question I had was if everything we do in here needs to go somewhere else before it can be decided on, which is effectively what all of these are, right? Then all of those, maybe then a side motion of this is these ones that function in that way need to be reviewed to make sure if they are still necessary for that
And
function.
I can assist in a little bit there for like at least three, like Economic Development Committee, just so you so this, I think this is helpful context, at least for the funding mechanism. I just think Economic Development, that is a sub-department, if you will. It's not even its own department, but it's a sub-wing of the administration department, which technically could be, is overseen and has oversight by this committee right here.
Right.
You know, so that's one. You know, there's also probably, and it's in here too, is there's probably a planning component there too for economic development, clearly, so that could be almost like a standing item. But overall, the funding mechanism comes from administration, which then in theory would get its approvals from this committee.
Right.
Same with HPC, that is actually folded and gets its funding from the planning and planning budget,
Planning
and
budget,
planning
yeah.
and parks committee. While with Celebration, they technically approve a budget and the council then endorses it, but at the same time, it's just one of, you know, all the events, whereas the planning and parks committee is the actual, you know, group that
The
approves
driver.
all the, approves the money and also approves all the funding, approves all the actual other events that happen in the city. It's just, it is a time intensive thing coming up with the logo and all
Well,
that.
yeah, I mean, I'm
But-
thinking with,
That saves the city time, that committee does, because
Right.
they don't have to come up with a logo, they don't have to come, and because it is the big event for the city,
Yeah.
I feel like it's including the residents and their.
and that makes sense that is, like, that is a real
Yep.
fixed thing, where some of the other ones are just kind of like, I don't know, we get around to it. So getting back then, if we want to break this up in parts, certainly we can, it's probably easier that way. So we have a motion, right, on the floor
For your first reading.
for the first reading. Do you want to include the sunset clause in that as well?
Oh, we can do that. I mean, I don't think there's a.
You made the motion, so you're cool
Yeah.
with that, okay, Tracy, you good with that? Okay, So
After
we'll-
a year, right?
after, yeah, after. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back for the second thing with the rest of them in a second. So everybody clear on the very large multi-point first part, which I will email to Amy so she doesn't have to write it down. Everybody clear on that one?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so you got that. Now, phase two is going to be a specific review, I guess, Tom, by you, as to specifically these tier 2/tier 3 ones that are, I mean, most of these tier 3 ones are going away, but like DZRC is tier 3, but probably is tier 2 kind of thing. So that would be a specific review as to the, you know, actual real purpose of these things and whether that is necessary. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, let me think how to do this here. Give me 1 second.
And just to confirm, part of that too is also the standardization of term limits too, right? Okay,
Yep,
perfect.
Any discussion ever about setting up a foundation for donations to the park?
So for this park or for parks in general?
Parks or the playground?
The playground currently, we're not a 501c3,
I know.
so they get the, I guess.
If we were, a lot more corporations would donate.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I mean, I just know how hard it is to do it. I've sat on 2 other boards where we are. And it takes a lot additional reporting, but corporations look at you and they can't write it off unless it is.
They, for the playground, they do get to write this one off because they technically send the payment through online to the Unlimited Play. Unlimited Play then has it in that account for this project, so they are able to give them the tax credit.
But they're not, are they able to tie that back to Wildwood? I mean, a
Yep.
lot of the corporations have to want to do it in an area where they do business and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I don't think you're communicating that very well in your brochures and stuff, but I was sat on 2 boards, we would never give donations that weren't going to a 503C. I would just, we don't do it.
We can definitely do a push to make sure it's easily communicated that they do get the tax write-off. I think it
And
is.
their bylaws right up there said that if they're not, then you don't donate money to those organizations. So a business can write it off as a business expense, but it's not a tax deductible one, so.
okay, I've got another slightly long motion, just to give you clarity here, Tom. If you're ready, see what you guys think of this one.
Just gave you time.
I move that the city council direct the city administrator to conduct a comprehensive review of tier 2 and tier 3 boards, commissions, committees, task forces, and advisory groups for the purpose of evaluating their continued necessity, clarity of mission, and alignment with the city's current governance and operational needs. The review shall only apply to advisory bodies classified as tier 2 or tier 3 and shall exclude any boards, commissions, or committees whose existence, authority, or structure is required by the city charter, Missouri state statute, or explicitly mandated city code. For each applicable advisory body, the city administrator shall assess whether the body's stated purpose and mission remain clear, current, and necessary, whether its responsibilities materially overlap with those of another advisory body, standing council committee, or staff function, whether its advisory role is distinct, additive, and aligned with the city's present operational and policy priorities, and whether the body's workload, output, and meeting activity reasonably justify the continued existence as a standing entity. As part of this review, the city administrator shall evaluate the term lengths, term limits, and appointment structure of tier 2 and tier 3 advisory bodies with the objective of identifying opportunities to standardize member term lengths where legally permissible, improve consistency across board bodies to support predictable rotation, continuity, and institutional knowledge, and reduce administrative complexity associated with staggered, inconsistent, or legacy term structures. Following completion of this review, the city administrator shall present a written report to the city council. It summarizes findings for each tier 2 and tier 3 advisory body, identifies any recommended clarifications, consolidations, reassignments of duties, or structural changes, identifies any recommended standard term lengths or appointment frameworks, and distinguishes between recommendations that may be implemented administratively and those that would require city council action, ordinance amendment, or charter considerations. This motion directs review and recommendation only. No advisory body shall be eliminated, consolidated, or materially altered as a result of this motion without subsequent city council action in accordance with applicable law. Yes, sir.
Adding that city administrator shall also provide a timeline for most efficacious, if that's a word, wind down.
Sure.
And most cost value effective redistribution of assets were usable.
That makes sense. I can add that in too. Does that make, anybody wanna change that, make that, suggest anything?
I don't think it's worth changing, but I think we all agree that the Development and Zoning Review Committee is a keeper.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if you want to move it back up to at a higher level so that we don't spend time coming up with ways to eliminate it.
I would just say like.
No, I think.
That falls into the thing where he's gonna go, it is tier, whether it's, regardless if it's tier 2 or tier 3, it stays, that's just the
It's
finding.
more so based off, the thing is, you know, for the benefits of it, the staff time it actually saves. It's actually a tier 1 in our mind, but it's because we had to create this, the rules and the classifications, per the classifications,
I get
it's
it.
kind of difficult,
And
but.
honestly, there are some wards that have never had anything in 4 years come through. So, you know, you don't really know the experience of that unless you have development coming through in order to do it. So I think that's
It is typically Ward 1 or 8, that's who gets them all. And sometimes, no.
Does your AI come up with all that right now, or did you
And that's just Joe's brain.
Yeah, it's a specialized thing, but as you guys talk, I build these things out, so it's not just making it up.
I'm sort of like, how can Ed come up with all that fast, you know?
I see him typing this
It's
stuff
smart.
out longhand.
it's his medication.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's all these antibiotics that got me on for this cough.
So I think that's, so you want to get a motion on that?
Yeah, I mean, if we can get, if somebody wants to make that motion, I think that, unless you think that is that too specific or is that not specific enough?
No, it's not, it's fine.
You know.
The only thing I would mention is just the reallocation of resources. I'm assuming if the allocation of resources, if one of these were to be eliminated or reduced significantly, we're probably gonna just tuck that time back into making better reports for the committees that still exist, and then also go back to, you know, some of the other like permit reviews.
Yeah, I mean, basically, this is, cause you know, we have I would say, you guys came up with a range for what these things take.
Yeah.
So like if, for instance, you find that, well, you know, watershed's a great example of this, so. Watershed's work as a task force is done, you would now suggest this needs to be reallocated, these responsibilities or whatever now get reallocated here. So it'd be here and there for these two things,
Yes.
and now that's done.
And any of those volunteers could go to some other committee if they'd like to continue to stay involved
That's right.
or run for office.
There we go. Yeah. So yeah, wind down, so Bob, do your thing. Where the city administrator determines that a tier 2 or tier 3 advisory body has fulfilled its original purpose, has become inactive or redundant, or no longer provides distinct or necessary advisory value, the city administrator is directed to recommend an orderly wind down, which may include completion of any remaining defined tasks or deliverables, formal documentation of conclusions, findings, and recommendations if applicable, and reassignment of any remaining advisory responsibilities to an appropriate standing committee or staff function. That work? All right. That was a lot. If anybody cares to make that motion or change it or whatever, we can maybe stop talking about boards and commissions. That would be pretty.
Make that motion.
All right. Mr. Mabry is gonna make the very long secondary motion. Anybody care to second it? Mr. Vanek will second it. Any further discussion? Amy, I will email it to you so you don't have to worry too much. All those in favor of our directions here on giving Tom some scope on this board and advisories in tier 2 and 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and I think
Second that.
Mr. Vanek did.
Okay.
And then I think that's got your term limits in there. Tom, do you wanna look into the term limit thing, or do you need any advice from us on whether we think 3 or 4 is?
That would be helpful. We can get the 3 or 4 from you all. I think legally either would work for appointed officials. It's not gonna be
I guess part of it, there's a massive study somewhere, in this building or storage place. We went back to trying to look at terms on 2-year terms on council. And the consensus really came down that if we had it to do all over again, you could figure out how to do 16 seats. 3 years is almost perfect because you get a year or so to learn how to do it, another year to do it, and then you can kind of decide what you want to do. And I just thought after we did all of that, that it kind of makes more sense, but we drop people into 4-year terms. We don't do it for council. I mean, the mayor's the only one's 4-year terms. But like you get on planning and zoning, that's quite a commitment to ask somebody for 4 years of, it used to be 2 nights a month. And in order to do that, so I don't know if there's any studies out there that say 3 or 4 year, but if you're gonna look at changing them, the logic might be there is a study that says 3 years is better than 4 years. More people will be willing to commit to 3 years than they are at 4. And then you do 2 years, it'd be 6 terms. Or if you go back and change it, you could go to 3, whatever. I just thought that at one point, we were so close trying to figure out how do you get away from an election every year with 2 people, all people running on the council. So we did the study and said, hindsight being perfect, 3 years appears to be a better, and there are a lot of cities, I think, that do a 3-year term versus 2-year. But I don't want us to spend hundreds of $1,000s studying. I just think it's interesting. Are there people who'd like to serve but don't want to commit to 4-year term? I'm on one board at 5 years. It's a long time. And you get to a point it's like, wow, every month for 5 years, you get to go to a meeting.
We could definitely research that. And there, I think we probably did it when we had the charter review too. So we'll look at some of the documentation we have on file and we can come back with, at least from what we can find, what the recommendation would be. I think you're right though with the 4, that could potentially turn off some casual folks that.
I know it has. I mean, I remember trying to get people on planning and zoning and they said, look, I got kids. I just can't commit to 4 years and I don't want to drop off in the middle of it. And same thing with council, 2 years was hard enough to get somebody to do that.
According to Google, Missouri and other like comparably sized cities, it's 3 years is the kind of the sweet spot. And then some cities have 4 years for more of the quasi judicial side of things, but that usually limits the amount of people that are willing to give that minimum.
We didn't have Google when we did that study,
Right.
Joe.
So I mean, I'm not saying.
We had a high level, could you fog a mirror?
Here we go. I mean, I'm not saying that we should just default to this, but I mean, I think if your memory serves that 3 years made sense, I think this is kind of saying, I mean, that makes sense to me. I'm only thinking of this just based on how we do it, and you're the only one in the room that's been the mayor, so you can answer this. I guess it wouldn't matter if people are staggered anyways, but what you probably don't want to have is a mayor appoint all new people to serve for 3 years and then appoint new people in year 4 and then they get.
Phase out, just how we had to build, I mean, all of these ones, we had to add people because we couldn't get a quorum.
Yeah.
And so we put people on there, we had to drop the qualifications, you weren't a practicing architect or whatever, and then you get people just arguing over it. But I just know that planning and zoning, was 4 years, but then when we put the term limits in, there's a whole other interpretation.
Mhm.
That, well, it really, if they hadn't been served that point or whatever, so I mean, it's been a hard one to kind of explain to, but I think maybe we're limiting more volunteers for some of those, and I might be totally wrong, but,
Maybe unless you guys disagree, I would say this. Does that, you can do some research, you got some guidance on this, you can advise us, right? Okay. Okay, I think that checks everything off on boards and commissions. Anybody got anything else they wanna add on that?
great job though for the staff, thank you.
Yes, this was a lot of work. Thanks, guys. Okay, I guess that brings us to you, Mr. Brown. Into Public Works, thankfully. Status report on city improvement projects.
Committee members, Chair Farmer, provided a report, an update on our current, permit projects. Not gonna go through it in detail, but, we'll entertain any questions you may have if you have them about any of the specific projects on the, report.
Any specific start date for the shared use path?
Well, we are having a pre-construction meeting on Friday of this week, so we will know more. They will present the schedule to us at that point, at least that's the expectation, so we should have a little more information coming out at that point. Thank you.
Anything else?
All
right.
Finish.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
That brings us to contractor bids for concrete street replacement project.
Chair Farmer Committee members, I think as you know, we have traditionally had a annual concrete street replacement project. We have 1.3 million budgeted for that purpose this year in 2026. We advertised our annual project in January, opened bids on the 26th. We had some very good participation and had 6 contractors submit bids for the project this year. And the lowest bid was received from Kelp Contracting at $1,175,080. And the second lowest was from T Hill Construction at about, I wanna say it's about 9,000 above that one. So we had 2 really good bids there out of the 6. So tonight, the department is making a recommendation to move forward with an agreement with Kelp Contracting to do our 2026 concrete street replacement project. And we'd like to actually work up towards our budgeted amount of 1.3 million. So the request would be to move forward with the agreement with Kelp at an amount of $1,250,000. And then we have an additional 50,000 set aside for construction, inspection, and materials testing services to be done by another entity. So that is the recommendation tonight.
All right, any questions, concerns, anybody care to make a motion?
Oh, actually, Matt, had that request that we separate out the everything but Turnberry Place.
Right.
So, I mean, I can make a motion to do that, or Mr. Mayberry, that's your ward, whatever.
I'm down to stand on ceremony, if I'm
But, I mean, we
talking
could,
too much, then you can have it, but I'll take it too.
I'd like to know why.
It's deemed, the argument that Matt's made is that it's deemed that we're shoveling in projects that are based on purely unit prices, and then we're also adding in one that's criteria is based on plans and specs and a scope of work with technical provisions, basically, and all the others above it are in a big bucket that will all be scheduled, executed. They're already bid on unit prices, so there's no quibbling on prices.
But that's not every project that the city will do. I mean, there'll be other projects come throughout the year that'll fall under that concrete repair and replacement bid.
Typically, it's like we'll go in and we'll replace multiple slabs on a street that, Rick's got to better understand where we're going, but we would go in and replace large sections of streets throughout really it's the neighborhood streets a lot of the times. So they're projects in and of themselves, they're just not defined as easily as.
Correct. Well, but that's what I'm saying. So I just don't understand. We've talked about doing Turnberry all this time. We didn't do it this last year because it was so late in the year. We've already took care of the contract. You could have dropped that in without even isolating it there, and none of us would have questioned that.
Well, the whole point I think that Matt was making was that while yes, it's a contract, so the project's in the can. It cannot be a not project, but what we've been able to do is cleave it. Its schedule, its execution, its management, completely separate from this mass of other street repair, street replacement projects. And it's a standalone. It'll be judged on its own merit, on its own schedule, its own timeline, where it can't be used as an excuse for not accomplishing and executing all the other required work that's separate from it. So it's just basically two council approval actions on the same contract, because it does happen that just doing simple math, it turns out that KELP is low bid, whether they take on both projects individually or both projects cumulatively, because there's no combination where T Hill could come out being low on one and win one if they were separated from each other. So it's really the way I saw it, it's more a means of cleaner and clearer accounting and management, project management.
Mr. Vanek.
Yeah, I think one of Matt's concerns is that there's been such a vocal and rather large outpouring of interest by the Turnberry residents that that if this has to go to the city council to get approved, correct? Or is this approved right here?
No, this is.
Well, the
going-
budget, I mean, we would send the bid, or we would send the
Yeah.
approval of this to the city council.
Okay, so this gets into the city council. And we have a huge turnout by Turnberry residents trying to plead with us not to pass this expenditure. And I don't know what the vote was previously, but there were some nays. You know, there were some people on the council who voted on behalf of the Turnberry residents. And I guess the concern perhaps is that they could, you know, flip a couple other votes and then this whole thing go down with loops. And then we don't, you know, that would, I think that's one of his concerns, that this whole expenditure does not get approved because of the advocacy of Turnberry residents. That's one of his
I don't know.
concerns.
I represented for 28 years and I've never voted that way.
It's really not a unit
Yeah,
pricing issue
yeah.
versus a project altogether issue. It's
They
a
don't want
project
to,
in general and not like you're afraid.
they'd like to have Turnberry not done.
Yeah, I'm just saying that perhaps the Turnberry residents can get a couple extra votes. This whole expenditure gets voted down at the city council level. And then we have to go through.
But still, the city's already agreed that Turnberry's gonna be open.
Yeah, true,
So,
true, but
I mean, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Those people are gonna be unhappy.
So-
There's a reason those trustees aren't coming in.
So I would just say this, and you know, I look at it this way, and this is to me, this is kind of this is more, and this is what I said to Matt, I sent Matt a note because he messaged me, like, I didn't know about this really until I kind of walked in here. So
Me neither.
whether we're arguing that this is a unit cost versus not, which is the statement, it would appear that that is not the actual reason that we're arguing for this. And so when we have the staff, and by the way, we've had lengthy conversations about this topic for months and months. So when we have the staff go out and prepare a bid package that states this, and I would suggest that the reason that it is called out in such a way is because it is somewhat unique in what they're doing rather than other maintenance and repair things. It's not like we're just filling in a pothole or whatever cracks and caulk or whatever they're doing. So I think it's important. One, it's a fine conversation to have. Today is just not the day to have that conversation. And I would suggest that if the concern is that if this goes to the city council as it is, and therefore it might fail, and then no city streets would be repaved, I would imagine the rest of the residents in the city would be somewhat upset about that. And so while I appreciate, as we have frequently on a lot of issues, citizens coming in and advocating their positions, and there are, whether it's a vocal majority or a vocal minority or whatever, it doesn't really matter. There are, in almost every case, an additional tens of thousands of people that live in our city that just want their road done. It doesn't mean it's not important to this group of people, it is, but we have set an ordinance that says we don't have these things anymore. We reviewed it. The city staff has looked at the review, they appealed it, they held up the appeal. The whole process that we're doing, all of these efficiencies, in my opinion, that we're trying to build in, whether it's with boards and commissions or anything else, is to make it make this process clear so that somebody can't just come in here and yell about whatever, and then we make decisions that adversely affect other parts of the city. So, I mean, I am happy we can vote on the motion, we can see what happens. If it passes, it passes, and we can have that conversation. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But to me, like, this is a great conversation to have had 4 months ago, or whenever it was that we started this, but an hour before
What's
the
it gonna
meeting.
cost to fix it?
Yeah, an hour before the meeting is not the time to be doing that. That's gonna create problems.
One thing to add there, Chair, if you don't mind, the reason why this was bid the way it was, with these, projects was during the budget discussions in October, there was direction from this committee we didn't have it originally listed, there was a direction from the committee to incorporate, the Turnberry removal in 2026, since originally it wasn't planned, and to do it with the other planned concrete maintenance work to make it as cheap as possible, so for efficiency. And then staff obviously looking at what other time of the year are we doing a lot of concrete work, bidding it with this project most likely did lower that cost, which you could somewhat see. I mean, there's other items we bid on, but it actually did lower it from the 33.5 that was originally bid.
Right.
Yeah.
So overall, I think we got what we wanted in the sense of having it cheaper, but this was a result from a direct motion from this committee and the council by approving.
I agree. I just think that we approve the Kelp contract and it includes what all you put in it. I don't know that making Turnberry a standout issue is important. I'd leave it in the way it is and go forward. And you know, the good thing about having 16 people on council, 2 people in that ward can vote against it. And the city will still go forward with the right stuff to do. So.
Well, I'll just offer that I never, ever fathomed that if there'd be successful enough outcry on a project that's already in the can and it's already budgeted, that enough protest from Turnberry residents would effectively have enough council members. I can't comprehend how enough council members could flip to threaten and compromise the entire slab project. So in that case, I'd be voting along with it together. If that's a concern, if that could have ever been a concern, because I can't fathom how that.
I've never
I
been
know
one
too.
voted down either, but
I've seen so many repeat instances, and they're regrettable too, Ed, that the council representative will vote no because they think they're the only no vote.
well, and I
That's not
understand,
how
I
you
mean,
govern.
you have your own constituents and you know, those are the people that vote for you. So that's why I said, I mean, I honestly think over the years, that's kind of one of the good things of 16 people. 2 people, 4 people can vote against it, and fortunately, the other council members will move it forward. Which I just think that's one of the things that you have 16 people, you know?
I just know from my own, I will say, like, a lot of these things these types of issues don't happen a tremendous amount, at least they haven't in the time I've been on the council. But, I know we had a lot of lengthy discussion when we did the SCOD several years ago. And, that really affected, my ward and your ward,
Yeah.
basically, Lauren and Donna's at the time. And, those residents, I genuinely did feel for the residents whose properties were affected by that. But I also have to look at all of the other residents that are in my ward around that space. And so, I think, like, I appreciate Councilmember Trottier putting this together. I think it's a well thought out concept. I think from a process standpoint, this is probably not the right time, but we have a motion, we've got a second. I'm happy to, unless you guys want to rescind your motions or whatever, I'm happy to have a vote. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I know how I'm gonna vote, but I am but one person. And I think everybody should, when you're sitting up on the council, you should vote the way you think is right. And it's, for different people, that's different reasons.
Regardless how other people vote.
Yeah.
I've been a no vote a lot of times by just myself.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's right. And I mean, that's hopefully you aren't in a position like that. I get it though.
Mhm.
But I also, can appreciate the fact that we just keep making it more and more difficult to get things done.
I hadn't, I'm in a position of withdrawing my motion, because I hadn't in my reading the email that was sent, and even in a discussion with Matt, I hadn't garnered that facet of the degree of concern or threat, but that is a threat. So by separating these out, having that proceed, I can't support that.
I'm perfectly okay with that. You know, that's your ward. So, yeah, if you don't want to second it, I'll remove my.
Well, I made the motion, but
Yeah, you guys are first and
now we're
second.
left with now we're left with the motion as, we're left with the action to,
Well, so,
follow the
so
recommendation.
procedurally, I guess if you guys decide you want to withdraw that motion, that's fine. Then we can go, if anybody would like to make a motion to accept the department's recommendation and pass that along, we can do that. Or we can.
I'll offer that, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'll.
Sure.
By my realizing that the project has been in the can since the budget was approved, so it's a project. It's not something that some bunch of people can come in and argue and plead, and we're gonna injure their kids and all that goes with it. This project is to the degree of engineering that I had not appreciated was already complete enough. I thought we had an entire design engineering scope, specs, technical provisions, quoting, award, and then all that follows. And then being able to try and shove this into fiscal year 26 was a cramp. That's why I had initially thought that it would be smart logistically to cleave this from the rest of it.
Sure.
But talk about coming into the meeting to find out new information. There's no statistical, there's no mathematical reason to keep these apart. The motion would logically be to follow the staff's recommendation to approve the project and get Kelp on board and get them going.
All right.
Make that motion. You want to bow out, or you want to?
Yeah, I'll bow out if you're bowing out.
Well, no,
No,
so
I'm
I
thinking-
was gonna make the motion to accept
To
the
accept-
to accept.
recommendation.
Staff's recommendation.
Oh, as is.
Correct.
Okay, so I won't second it. I'm sure somebody else will.
Okay,
The $1,175,080 is what we're approving for the concrete replacement stuff. Happens to have the Turnberry in there,
Mhm.
but I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody.
No.
But I certainly think that that's what the direction of the staff is. And honestly, you save $10,000 by doing it this way.
Yeah.
So I mean, last year, if we would have just gone up there and immediately tore it out, it would cost us $10,000 more. So this is exactly what we thought we were gonna build it into. And I guess the issue is by isolating it like that, and I represented those people for years. I just think that the bigger issue is we have a contract for $1,100,000 and we're gonna support that recommendation. The decision was already made on Turnberry several months ago.
Right.
So
All right, well, so Mr. Mabry's making the motion. Anybody care to second the department's recommendation? Seconded by Mr. Marshall. Any further discussion on the item? All right, all those in favor? We'll try a voice vote. Or we can do roll call. You want me to do roll call?
roll call, that's fair.
We'll do a roll call vote. All right, roll call vote.
Councilmember Mabry,
aye.
Councilmember Diane,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes,
Councilmember, oh, he's not here. Councilmember Vanek,
Yes.
Councilmember Albers.
Yes.
All right. Rick, looks like you get to lay down some concrete again.
Very
It's an
good.
exciting day.
That is good.
Okay,
the snow first.
landscape maintenance. Mr. Walsh, do we get to hear from you now? Or is it still Rick?
Well, I wouldn't
Oh,
mind
yeah, no.
introducing the two, and in
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Okay.
fact, I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
suggest maybe we consider taking the next two items
Together.
together.
I knew it
potentially,
Sure, that works for me.
To save time, because they are somewhat related.
Yep.
So if that's okay, I'll go
Yeah,
ahead. and
anybody
put it off.
have an issue with us taking these two together?
Nope, I think that's a good way to do
That's
it.
not- we.
That's okay, we're gonna take
Start
the,
over.
we're gonna take the
C and
landscape
D
maintenance,
together.
yeah, C and D
C and D.
together.
Okay.
Or, yeah, C and D, yep.
Green.
So
Take it away, Rick.
the next two items, council members, pertain to proposed contracts for maintenance of landscaping and stormwater management areas. 3 years ago in 2026, we kind of split these two maintenance requirements out as separate projects because they entailed more specialty work, and we felt that our existing contractors that were doing work for us really didn't have the skill set that was necessary, so we split them out and we put proposals out at that time for the work. So one is for maintenance and of landscape beds that we have throughout the city. We have, as you know, I think, over the years have beautified Strucker Road with islands that are landscaped. Route 109, of course, the roundabouts, the median islands, Route 100, we have landscaping. Well, to a lesser degree, maybe on Manchester Road, but so those areas are split out as one potential project. It's essentially landscape maintenance, and then the other one is the stormwater management areas, and that pertains to, there's 5 areas on Route 109 that were constructed with the improvements to Route 109 over the last 10 to 15 years now. There's the 2 areas near Pond Grover Parkway, one on the east side, one on the west side. It includes the wet basin that's there. And then south of 100, there's 3 dry bioretention areas that are maintained as well. So those 5 areas are one package. And then the other are the landscaping along Strecker, Route 109, 100, and Manchester Road. So those were bid out in 2023 as essentially 3-year packages. As they expire at the end of March, we put out an RFP, one for each, to get proposals from contractors to continue that work starting on April 1st. So Mike helped put that together, and we opened or received proposals on both of those and got one response, which was from Go Green. The good part of that was Go Green, which is our current provider, did provide us a response for both projects, but that was the only one that we received. Now, Go Green's proposal was actually a slight reduction in cost in both cases. So that was the other good side of it. Like to have had more competition, but we only received the one proposal from Go Green. I would say in both cases, in the prior 2023 solicitation, we did get multiple bidders for both projects, and Go Green was significantly lower when we bid them before. So I have every reason to believe that their pricing is pretty competitive. I just don't have any bids other than Go Green at this point to demonstrate that directly. But clearly they did provide pricing that for both projects reduce our costs for the next 3 years. So from that perspective, and the perspective that we have worked with Go Green, we have been satisfied with their work. And they are very well committed to Wildwood. In fact, so much that he's wanting to build a maintenance facility in town center. Felt like this was a solid proposal, and I think in the city's best interest to move forward with it. So the department is recommending moving forward with a contract, city contract agreement with Go Green for both projects. The cost of the landscape maintenance would be essentially a little under 100,000 per year, or a total. What I'm asking for is an authorization to go up to 330,000 over the 3-year term of the agreement. And the stormwater management area contract would be for an annual amount of $17,700. A total authorization of about $58,410 over the 3 years. So that is the recommendation tonight to the committee. Mike came because he's the one who supervises Go Green in this work, helped put the proposal together. He is here tonight, as well, as you obviously know, and can help address any questions that you may have going forward. I guess that's the recommendation, is move forward with city contract agreements for both of these projects tonight.
Yes, sir.
Hey Rick, how many people did you request getting bids from, just out of curiosity?
So what we typically do is we advertise it on our website, and then we have a bidding website that we upload it to, and we advertise it in that manner as well. So we don't directly send it out. It is also set up in the local county and newspaper. So it's available there as well. And generally we do find that, and that's what we do consistently for all projects. So We didn't do anything differently here. Probably the last time we did it, we reached out and tried to generate interest. And what we tend to find is when we do that, we might get extra bids. They don't usually are very competitive. They're contractors that if they're not looking to do the work, they'll give us a price, but it's usually not very competitive because they're doing it. because
Right,
we asked
because they don't want
them to do it.
Right.
So that doesn't always provide fruitful bids, quite frankly.
Okay. Do we have anything that requires that we should get more than one bid for a
Not
project like
Not
this?
through an official RFP process, the key word there, and this goes for going through the official, like publishing of bids.
Okay.
And also if it's just something that's under my purchasing authority and I can go out and solicit bids, it's the solicitation, so. When you do it that way, as long as you go out to the public, you do the public notice requirements and you do try to attempt contact. If you get a bid, you can proceed, but under my purchasing authority, it's soliciting 3 bids. So you would have to at least reach out to 3, but you don't have to actually get 3 responses.
We we normally don't see this happen very often.
Not very often. This is, I will say, I don't know, if Mr. Brown pointed this out. This is the first year that we've been really, this is actually, I wanted to give kudos to the Department of Public Works as a whole, because they've been doing a great job at doing this exact thing, but taking our hourly contract positions and breaking them up as a unit for unit pricing, instead of having it where we have a contractor just give us an hourly rate to maintain the landscape bed. Now we can tell them, here's the exact amount of landscaping that you're gonna have to do this year. Give us an overall price for the entire year. That helps us with budgeting and forecasting so much more than having an hourly rate, because you just don't know what's gonna hit us. I think that may be what most likely is throwing some of the contractors off, I have to assume, because they're not just throwing an hourly rate at it where
Okay.
they'd figure it out later. It's more so they have to really know their numbers and stuff, and also, quite frankly, be familiar with some of our landscaped areas to know what goes into actually maintaining them. That said, I mean, Rick, do you think that has some way on this too, the way we proposed the bid in the first place?
Well, I think, you know, we've talked through this, we talked to it in great detail. We don't have bidders calling us, asking us for work. They're not knocking on our door. They really aren't out there actively looking for work. So I think in this line, it seems that a lot of these contractors are strictly focused first just pertaining to the contracts they have with the clients they have. I don't see a lot of them coming and knocking on our door. Again, when we solicit to them, we go out and reach, well, we went through this with the mowing contract last year, frankly. We reached out, Mike reached out to a number of local contractors that he was aware of and asked for bids, and we got a couple maybe lined up, but I don't recall that any ones that we really knocked on their door had competitive bids. Because Go Green won that one too.
Yeah, and I believe I went to at least 10 different grass cutting companies in the, I mean, I went as far as Valley Park and just locally, and I think only one of them actually bid, and they were, I want to say 3 times higher than Go Green for that particular RFP.
Question.
And we only had 3 bids for the mowing.
Mr. Mabry.
Yes, when I went through and read, and I saw that there had been only one responsive bidder, only one bidder. I was very impressed by the, what I would call the stringent, requirements for training and safety for landscaping contractors. The OSHA 10-hour, the stipulation of crews above a certain size would require certain defined, requirements, the wage standards of above certain employee base. That seemed to me to be frightful, scary things for most landscaping style contractors to contend with, where they go after lawn mowing and they go after what they can get away with. So I wondered if had that been something that the city had started or thought was necessary for this scope of work type instead of hourly rate type bidding? Or is this
The
something?
idea was lower costs and have more, it was a lower cost. We had access to the database that the tool GIS to be able to start making some of these maps to visualize it and then quantify it, but more importantly, it's just way easier for projecting costs over the course of a year because especially for like mowing and landscaping, quite frankly, it's just you have an uptick in the spring. We have enough data to know kind of when we're having an uptick, when in the summer you don't necessarily need to cut every week. And this allows us to at least have them tell us, you know, here's the number of cuts or here's the amount of landscape we needed done for that year. You know, as long as we don't get complaints about it and it looks good, you know, and you maintain it, honestly, it's just you inspecting it. It's almost delegating a little bit more to the contractor versus us having to watch them like a hawk on making sure scope creep doesn't occur, which contractors are always constantly trying to do.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I think the whole bidding thing is excellent. The thing that always scares me when you do contract services is what happens if Go Green disappears tomorrow? Who do you go to? And not getting people to bid on it. It's great because it's reduction and all that, but the fear always is when something happens to them, who do we go find to fill in on that? And then at what price that, you know, that works out to be. But I do think it's a good job. And I think the fact is, they know what they have to do and they can reduce their cost. Other people come in and it's a lot of small stuff as well as the big stuff. And if you can do the big stuff, you can't do the small stuff, or you don't want to do the small stuff. So I think that's part of where I just know there years ago when they were trying to do that whole median, so watching a guy on a 48-inch mower mow something that 12-foot gang mowers would take care of, kind of didn't make a lot of sense. But if they don't want to bid on it, then you're gonna have to go with the guy's gonna make 3 times the trips and
Right.
you can pay it that way. But I thought it was well written. Biggest fear would be is if we don't let them build their building. No, if they decide they don't want to do business with us, then we've got a situation where you gotta try to find out. But that's just part of how do you get more people to bid? And we'd had that over the years with concrete and asphalt and other stuff that only 2 people bid. Well, that's really not bidding $1 million, you know, you gotta watch it, so.
I was gonna point out, I mean, at the end of the day, we've had this recently and he still does some work for us, but Glenn Gailey that did a ton of the maintenance work and his bids were always very competitive, but he's also just very good at what he did. Go Green's kind of filled a lot of those voids, but I think knocking them down with this, an exact cost at the front end is great, but also, you know, I think anytime you have a contractor that's kind of becoming or has been a mainstay for the city, it would sting when they leave because everyone else, like you said, they don't have the resources that are perfectly planned, or they're gonna have to hire people or get people on board. It's kind of getting to a point too with some of the one-off jobs like the trash emptying, things like that, gets handled by them too, with in these contracts. And it does warrant more discussion and more review because some of these things may
Blessings and take it.
There we go.
count your blessing and take it, but could eventually be something to review.
All right. Anybody care to make a motion to accept the contract as presented, made by Mr. Marshall?
Put both of them together.
Yep. Seconded by Ms. Nyan. All right, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Cool. I would also, I may be wrong on this, but I think you mentioned it, Tom, like, I feel like we got a lot more bids on the concrete stuff than we have in the past, probably because some of those MODOC projects are starting to close out. You know, maybe this landscaping thing, I know we're having that issue I've had a lot of conversations with subdivisions where they're having trouble getting bids to cut their common ground because the service providers are just very specific on who they're dealing with now, and they don't really have the capacity to expand too much, so. we're
And
running
they
into-
get the help they had.
Right. Okay, let's see, ash tree program. Up next.
Thank you, Chair Farmer. I'll probably let Mike talk a little more, on this one. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind starting it off real quick.
Sure.
But, just because of the background, so. The ash tree program, we come to you pretty much every year since probably 2020 or more. Regarding ash trees, and we have treated ash trees. We made the decision in 2020 to start treating our best quality, high value ash trees. And at that time, we started off treating almost 400 trees with a company called Arbor Masters. Continued that work all the way up until 2025. Essentially, we've treated half the trees every other year. And over the years, they've diminished. We have fewer that are still viable, that have been deemed viable enough to retreat, but nonetheless, we still have, I think at this point, 203 trees, according to Mike. So this year, we wanted to come back and have this discussion with y'all about ash trees again and what we want to do with our treated ash trees. And I think last year when we got the approval to treat through Omni Tree Service, it was around 87 ash trees. There was discussion at City Council relative to whether we wanted to continue or not. And I think the overall sentiment was leaning towards not going forward with the program. So wanted to bring Mike in and have a little discussion about this. And I asked Mike to kind of review it and come up with his recommendation. He was very kind to do that, and he put a little report together, and essentially he suggested we should consider moving forward with treatment of just our grand ash trees, those that would be considered grand trees under our city code, which would reduce the number we're treating quite a bit overall to about 68 trees over the next 2 years. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Grand trees would be those that would be at least 24-inch diameter at breast height.
Mhm.
So they're good sized trees. Those are the trees that people probably most would appreciate having them in front of their house, I would think. They'll have the most impact if we don't treat them and they die and need to be removed. So I thought that was a good idea. Maybe that recommendation is ultimately we want to bring to you is to consider just moving forward with treatment of the grand ash trees that we have. These are just the street trees. About 68 of them that we believe, and there would be 56 to be treated in 26, 12 in 2027. Total cost of about 17,000. What was the number? 17 something thousand to treat those 68 trees, if I recall. And obviously to remove them is a lot more money. And if we don't treat them, we're gonna have a lot quicker impact to the budget, obviously, than if we treat them, frankly. So there are pros and cons. Obviously, there's concerns about the safety of the chemical and the impact on pollinators out there. So I think I'm gonna let Mike talk a little bit further about it, but in general, we wanted to kind of bring that recommendation to the committee and see what your thoughts are on moving forward. And I think the thought was, depending on the action here, we might take it to the work session or the overall council to decide before we went forward. It really depends on what you all decide tonight, frankly, but because I don't have a formal agreement or contract to present to you tonight. It was just the general discussion about the program moving forward. So why don't you add anything on this?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. What I'd like to add is, the 68 trees that I suggested to retreat is more or less a compromise to delay the inevitable removal of all of them. We have 303 ash trees left as street trees in Wildwood. Since emerald ash borer was found here, there's about 100 of those trees that were never treated. And so those trees are still being removed as they deteriorate and die. Some of them, surprisingly, have shown some resistance to the borer, but inevitably they'll probably succumb to it at some point. So those 100 trees set aside need to be removed in the next year, 2 years, 3 years. And we've been removing ash trees every year since I've been here. We removed 32 in 24, 33 in 25. So we reduced the population there. Of those 200 or so trees that are being treated, if we discontinue treatments of those, all of them across the board, I think we'll have a pretty good hit to the budget when they all start to die and decline. So if we could kind of spread it out a little more by saving some of the bigger ones, some of the ones that would be most noticeable if removed. Although they're the more expensive ones to treat, they're also the more expensive ones to remove. Just an estimate from Omni on what it would cost to remove one grand ash tree, and I just use 25 inches in diameter. We have some that are up to 32 inches. It's about $2,400 just to remove the tree, leave the stump, don't replant. So, that's if I think about removing 68 grand trees, that's a big cost, which I think can be spread out over time. But I also look at just the impact to some of the streets. If we just removed all of the ash trees right now, a street like Gunnison Gorge off Clayton Road has 21 ash trees remaining. Some of those are being treated, some of them are not. But if we went through and just removed all the ash trees, it would be a significant hit to the street, cause many of them are all the way past Medicine Bow, all the way towards the end of the street, and you'd in a sense be eliminating most of the trees on that street, and the next species that's on that street, the most of them, it's sweet gum, so if you go through and cut all the ash trees and leave the sweet gum, some residents might ask, who told you to do this, you know? So I'm trying to find a good transition to not just pulling the plug on all the ash trees, retreating some, and maybe these next two treatment cycles would be the last for these 68 trees. You know, if we retreat this year, that treatment is expected to last at least 2 years, so we wouldn't have the discussion about those 56 trees again until 2 years from now. And you know, the 12 other ones, and the rest of the ash trees, I think we just need to start removing. Even some of the treated trees have been dying. And a lot of other communities around here have removed most or all of their ash trees. Some are saving these legacy trees. Some even have residents adopt the trees and pay for the treatments, but it's I think we've come a long way, even prior to me being here with the city. You know, 1,300 trees were removed prior to myself being here, so.
The ironic thing is, when he came on board, he found more trees for us.
He did.
I'm not sure how that worked exactly, but either we weren't doing our job.
Special too.
Yeah.
We'll be working.
All right, Mr. Marshall.
So the line above reasons for recommendation says 50, is it $50 or 50,000 for ash tree replacement?
We have 50,000, I'm sorry. that's
You need a
mistake, yeah.
typo there. You
That's
need to get that
50,000,
correct.
correct, yeah.
Supposed to be for.
So I think what Mike just explained, put one more paragraph in here. Just explain $2,400 to take it down. And what was the treatment, 100 and,
Well, for all those trees, 68, it's $17,400.
I know that, so take the 68 trees, whatever that is, divided. You're not talking $2,400. I mean, I just think to make it so simple to say, we're going to try to provide some of this to cut this down so that you're really saving money by trying to do this. And I think that's the part that's missing. And yet Dr. Rambo is gonna vote no, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I think, but when you look at the overall plan and you did an excellent job of explaining it, that just needs to be put in there to say, here's how many we have and but make it just that simple to show the dollars. It's just a suggestion, but I think that would be great. And I think we should do what you're recommending. That makes sense.
Anybody else?
To the residents who have the ash trees in their front yard, are they aware of this adoption program where they can?
We don't have an adoption program yet.
Well, we don't-
I don't even know,
don't
many
do that.
residents probably aren't even aware that the trees get treated. There's like a little silver
It's like a-
badge that's on it, and unless you know what that is.
Yeah.
Or where they
But
don't.
I mean, so we don't have that program.
We do not.
Do we want that program?
I'll defer to
Because-
Mike, but that's the staff time put into overseeing a program like that, I assume would outpace the benefits of having.
So the city of De Pere adopted that program. They had 12 residents adopt the trees. And as far as I know, in the city of Wildwood, there's only been one tree and one resident that has opted to have their own tree in their tree lawn treated when they found out the city was no longer gonna treat it. And that tree was deemed untreatable by Davy in 2022 because it's probably one of the ugliest ash trees in Wildwood. But
Put a picture contest out there.
Yeah.
But it's still, the resident has been paying to treat it and, but it,
Might have a special meaning.
There you go.
it does.
Well, and I mean,
Yeah.
we could set out, I mean, in theory, we could send it, when we get to removing all these, we can
Sure.
send out one last little notice, like if you want to treat this tree, then we'll let you do it, and we'll just leave it alone and we'll note it in Tree Keeper and call it a day, but if not, then we're gonna do what we gotta do.
Yeah.
I think that's not a bad idea, if especially for the bigger one.
And if it's viable to be treated,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
even whether these trees have been treated or untreated, I go through every year and look at these ash trees as I would most any tree driving by in the street trees, but specifically the ash trees, if they're set to be retreated, I'll go out there after the trees leaf out, which is later for ash trees, And if there's a certain percentage of canopy or this tree does not look good, there's decay at the base, any reason I could find to where we shouldn't be saving this tree, it gets removed from the treatment list. And
And so, does an ash tree get to a certain point where it can't be used to make bats and sticks and different things like that?
as long as there's not presence of decay in the base of the tree, and you could visually see that decay, and ash trees are pretty resistant to decay.
So a dead tree can,
A dead tree can no longer produce any viable
okay,
timber of any kind, especially ash trees. One of the issues is when they die, you know, an oak tree might stand for 10, 20 years and be a good source of firewood down the road, but when ash trees die, they become brittle, and in 2 to 3 years, they deteriorate.
thanks.
And that does bring up a good point, but if there's a tornado, how much wood do you think we dispose of? Maybe we can offer some firewood program.
You could, but one of the ways ash trees, Emerald ash borer got to Missouri was moving firewood.
Oh, that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anybody have,
Maryville.
anybody have any other questions, comments, concerns? So I'll ask for a motion here, but I do want to say, and I think that this is, thank you for coming this evening, Mike. I will say, we spent a long time as a council trying to get an arborist on staff, because for a long time, we were just sort of trying to figure all this out on our own, and Rick did a great job of trying to help us understand this to the best of our ability. But I think that having a person on staff that can really look at this and assess the issue and be able to tell us, look, it's we'll go take the trees out tomorrow, it's $160,000, or we can do this in a more paced way where the residents aren't quite as impacted, everything else. I mean, certainly there's drawbacks to the treatments, but I think this is a smart way to do it.
10 times more expensive to take it out than it is to treat it.
Right.
I mean, I just honestly think that's.
Just from a dollar standpoint, not even the fact that like.
For those,
Genesis Gorge
it's
would
10
be-
times more, you know, the 2,400 versus $255.
Yep.
I kind of think that answers a whole lot of.
All right, would anybody care to make a motion to accept Mr. Walsh's recommendation?
Are you wanting it amended then?
No,
Put that in there?
I just think we put in your write-up that Rick.
That's something we
sends
can do just with
to
your.
Yeah.
work to-
Oh, okay.
Just to make it that simple, it's 10 times more
No,
expensive
okay, that's
to
fine.
take it out.
Yes. Mr. Albers will make the motion. Anybody care to second? Mr. Vanek will second it. All those in favor of proceeding with the Emerald Ash Borer recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes.
By the way.
Very nice work. Looks like the last item this evening is the MSD Stormwater Grant Agreement.
Chair Farmer, council members, just a final comment on the ash. We won't have it for the next coming, it'll be the March meeting of the city council probably. Just because the schedules don't permit it. This next item is a agreement with MSD. As I think we've talked here, in maybe recent months, we're gonna start receiving an allocation of funds from MSD that we can utilize for stormwater management purposes in the city in MSD's jurisdictional area. So to allow us to participate in the program, in the stormwater grant program, we are required to submit or sign this participation agreement that MSD has forwarded to our attention. So there is no cost to the city to enter into the agreement, but we are required to do it if we want to utilize those funds directly for projects that we are able to oversee and direct. So it is a requirement to move forward with the execution of this agreement. So tonight we are recommending that the city move forward with the execution of the agreement with MSD tonight, and that is the recommendation. If there's any specific questions, I'll be glad to do my best to address them at this time.
Any questions, concerns, discussion, or anybody care to make a motion? All right,
Gives us my money.
Mr. Mabry will make the motion to approve the department's recommendation and prepare the contract. I guess, is that a contract or just an?
It'd be an intergovernmental agreement, with MSD
And we'll get that at the next council meeting, I assume.
That's the plan.
Okay. Mr. Mabry will make that. Mr. Albers will second it. Any discussion? All
I
right.
want to
well,
note something too, just real quick.
Yeah.
I know it's late. Just, this will be on the next agenda, but the discussion down at the state, we did get approached by the state senator that represents Wildwood, and he is wanting to pick up the mantle for the erosion funding. So
It's nice somebody wants to.
Just as an FYI.
He's confused, I'm sure.
I wanted,
That would be a first.
I wanted to give just a heads up there, but it wouldn't require all too much from staff other than just giving it pretty much a one-sheeter on the basins project, so.
Great.
We'll bring it back just to double down and confirm from the council on the request.
Can we just tell you to accept his
Help.
picking up of the
We did
mantle?
say we can't imagine we would be
Right.
against the money, so that said, the plan will be to just let everyone know that we are putting together a quick one-sheeter that shows really the basins affecting, not what we were told is try to make this a regional issue, and if we're putting the basins back together and storing more water, it actually helps. If it does store more water, helps Clarkson Valley, helps Chesterfield, and helps the city of Wildwood. So hope is that can now be somewhat interpreted as, oh, it's a St. Louis County issue versus a Wildwood.
How about Ellisville?
You should go more date here, go to Louisiana.
They still would.
Water goes that way anyways.
It does, well, the creek, not the,
I'm just
you
kidding.
can technically say the Army Corps of Engineers, everybody else along that road. But
Yeah, I mean, I would think any of the feeder communities around us for sure. And this is Mr. Gregory, I assume?
yes, yes, Mr. Gregory is.
Question, about how much money you think this MSD thing is a year?
About
300 grand.
300,000, if I'm correct.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah, the only question I had, Rick, and there's really not a lot we can do about it anyways. I'm just curious. Like, I know there was some back and forth about whether like we are gonna get the $300,000 to
No,
do these things, or we have to give them projects, or it's their projects. Did we ever get into?
It's like almost like a trust, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Rick, but it's almost like a trust if you think about it. There is payments going in, MSD's handling that money, which means they're probably investing that money, making the money off the money. But at the end of the day, they are offering this program where it's the city's money. We just have to meet certain criterion to then have that money released to us to do X project.
Yep.
That said, over time, each year, that money in that bank account will accumulate and continue to build. There won't ever be a time where if you don't use it, you lose it type deal. Whereas that was at least a worry at the front end. But it does seem like the city would not be able to secure those funds without having a direct project to use them on. If I'm wrong on that, but that's what I.
It's gotta be in in the
MSD
metropolitan MSD area, it can't
Yep.
be outside that
Yep.
watershed.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm excited to finally get this and get it going, but that is an unfortunate reality in our city, which is basically probably most things west of 109 aren't gonna qualify for this, but
Yeah.
that doesn't change the fact that
Take what we can get.
that's right. All right, so if anybody would care to make a motion to accept this and get this proposal ready to go for the next council
We
meeting?
did.
Oh, we did. Did we vote? I forgot.
All in favor?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Clearly, it's starting to get a little bit late. Okay, any miscellaneous items anybody wants to bring up before we press on? Yes, sir.
I would just like to question the fact of doing a review of legal services.
Okay.
10 years ago, so being the old guy here, I've been around for every 10 years when we change our legal counsel. And I just think we're coming up on 10 years, and in all fairness, pricing, expected coverage, that type of stuff. I know that I've been involved with it the last couple of times, so there is a process, there's probably some backup documentation of how we go about the process, but I know that in 6, 16, and 26 would be 10 years each of just reviewing it again, put it out there, see what our needs are, and again, used to a lot of that was just in clerical typing up ordinance and stuff. Now I think most of that's automated. So it'd be interesting to see if we put it on our agenda to, I just think we should be looking at those kind of costs
Okay.
on at least 10 years. I mean, we
Sure.
have to do the charter and everything else.
How long, or I guess, are we gonna have a discussion, or do you wanna have, like, put an actual, like, have Tom or whoever put like this is what we're looking to do?
I think to go out for that, and only because we do it every 10 years. I don't know that does it have to come from the full council recommendation to do it?
It's an appointed position. I'll have to do a little research into that, whether it definitely will need some type of RFQ provision. I know last time we did like interviews with the council and the relevant candidates. So it's almost like an
The
interview
legal
process.
review?
Yeah, because we have, we were talking about legal services, right? And finding a attorney to do that. yes, we have to, because at the end of the day, you have to then appoint, if there would be a change, appoint an individual to take up the mantle. if you will. It's an official position.
I could actually send you the announcement that Mayor Boland sent out in May of 2016, appointing John Young as the new city attorney.
Yeah, we can bring that, we can,
So I just, it's been 10 years, so that had to be done, and he didn't go in until April,
okay, well, that's a good time,
so,
start that process.
Um,
Yes, sir.
Wasn't the subject of looking for a new lobbyist put up there too?
Yeah, I mean, so we approved Jake's contract, but I do think, you know, as we move through this, you know, it makes sense to me that if we're, you know, some of these similar, I mean, it's a little different, obviously, but, you know, I think we should look at what we want and also probably have a conversation to communicate to Jake what, from an expectation standpoint, what we would really look for, because
You know, they come once a year, but throughout the year, I've never heard a report saying this was done or he accomplished this by doing that or whatever, you know?
he typically sends out, I mean, we do get an email, I will say, we do get an email about like all of the things that are moving forward. I think it would probably be a little bit more useful if we had some context around it, because, you know, some things like we've talked a lot about the grocery, you know, tax issue. That's something I think most people are aware of now, but there's other things that might kind of pop up out of
popped
nowhere.
up today on the utilities, that's coming out of committee, so
Right.
that's a pretty serious.
That's coming quick.
That said, I mean, if there's anything that catches your eye in that bill list, if we get a motion or if any of our committee meetings are at council, if there's and we're keeping an eye on it too.
Right.
His job is to kind of keep an ear to the ground and tell us like, this is a, you know, big flashing red light. And then we look at it, all we can do is really testify and whatnot. But if you have anything on that bill list that is of specific interest, and please feel free to bring it back up to the committee, and if we're all in, you know, if the committee's all in agreement, we can definitely have him go
So
ahead.
just take the one that came out this afternoon from the municipal league. What are we as a city doing about it?
Well, he's supposedly working with lawmakers, meeting with, are you talking about the utility piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's talking with the people that passed the bill last year for the telecommunications line, and he's working with, that's where actually we heard from David Gregory, his office, because of that exact thing. So that was in my CA report a week and a half ago.
And then today it came out though, it's out of committee, so I mean, that's moving
It's-
forward pretty fast.
It is.
Now, are they planning on, what's the position?
So if, in effect, the city, you know, that's something the council could do, is testify. That's really the only thing we can do, other than have that person talk with other people down at Jefferson City. And if the council, I mean, quite frankly, if we want to do that right now, that would be something that we can have on the council agenda, at least as a quick action item.
I just think part of the thing that's kind of scary is we don't have a state rep. We have our senator who, for one reason now in 2 years, has decided he wants to talk to us. But we don't have anybody really representing our interest and you know, we've gone through this over the years, and it's kind of like with the whole data thing. At one point, we fought the lawsuits to get the utility rights of the easements, and the state took it away from us. We did the cell towers, and then the state takes it away from us. So somehow, some way, we ought to try to, they're pretty quick when they want people to support them. Get some kind of communication out there, and I just don't know Jake well enough, but I was very disappointed in his answers about his accomplishments last year for Chesterfield and Clarkson Valley. That has nothing to do with us, and we spent $27,000. So I just think that we need to really kind of look at it. And if we don't want anybody, I get it, but then we have nobody to complain to. But I also know that lobbyists don't control everything down there. But I just thought it's kind of interesting, and I know Dave Schatz owns a company that did that, so I mean, how naive of us to think that, you know, we have a shot at it, but that's a lot of money to the cities.
Yeah, I mean,
But that would be devastating.
I would just suggest, like, some of those things we probably as a city need to start communicating out a little bit better, not even just to the council, but to the general community. But then I would suggest, I mean, I think it was last year, I filled in for Mayor Garitano and testified about the grocery thing. I think that, I don't know, it probably didn't help at all. But I think it is important for, especially because we don't have a representative currently, for us to get every opportunity we have to go down there and talk to whomever. So if Jake knows that there's a committee hearing that, you know, is worth us going to, it would be great for him to let us know that, like, maybe before the morning that it is happening, which is kind of how I remember that last time happening, which was,
Well, that's unfortunate. That's how fast it moves. It comes out of committee. They're gonna have more hearings Monday, probably.
Yep.
And then they'll be out next Thursday. Again, it's just one of those things that it's so difficult to try to figure out what the role is that we should be playing on it. But yet it ends up affecting everybody who lives in the city.
very true. All right, anything else? I just have one quick thing and at the next meeting, we're gonna have a conversation about just reviewing the police contract because we probably need to get ahead on that. So I just wanna be very clear, like, we're all very happy and excited about the police services that you guys provide and are appreciative of it, but we do need to look at it from a budgetary standpoint and things like that. So I just wanna get everybody kind of in the mindset of thinking about those things as we go forward. And then I'm sure you'll hear about it if you haven't, Rick. There was a 1-car accident on West Glen Farms over the weekend. And somebody took out the no left turn sign in front of Bank of Houston. And it is currently laying in a heap on the sidewalk. So I don't know how we go about replacing that. I'm sure after the snow melts or whatever, but
We can take care of it.
there's a lot of stuff happening over in that neck of the woods in the last few weeks, and I would sure like it if it
Is
would
it
stop.
because of that new liquor store?
Ah,
I was worried about that. If I had to guess, because I happen to be taking my daughter some places, so I happened by it a few times. If I had to guess, it was either a kid who didn't really know what they were doing, or I think it was maybe in a medical emergency. They were up on the side of the road, way up before they finally hit something. But when they hit that sign, they really did a good job on their car. So
Left them mark.
those signs are in there solidly, that is for sure.
Amy, did Rockwood say anything about picking up the deer?
I'm guessing that, did they pick?
I haven't walked back down.
I did call and she said, we will let maintenance know that they need to get out there to pick
A
the
deer on West Glen came out of Ward 4, jumped over into Ward 5, and a car got it.
Mhm.
And it's bigger than the county before we incorporated. I called one time, they said, well, just put it in a trash bag like you would a squirrel. That's a 150-pound squirrel.
Yeah.
But it was laying in Rockwoods in the reservation, or off the sidewalk. But if the kids were walking to school, the kids would have been all over the thing.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty large doe laying dead on Rockwood's property behind Green Pines.
It's nice of you to drag it over to their property before we have to take it.
I had to do it. I went back, put a mask on.
Get those extra steps in.
I was gonna get it out on the street, but no, it was not on the city sidewalk, but it was in the woods. And I just remember when my kids were little, the deer along Valley Road to get killed. Every kid in the neighborhood had to go down and take a poke at it, you know? So, but thank you for calling.
All right, any other questions, concerns, or anybody care to make a motion to adjourn? Made by Ms. Nyan, seconded by Mr. Vanek. All those in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you, everybody. We will see you, our next meeting is Tuesday, March 3rd at 5:30, and we'll see you at the council meeting.
Will send me that, what came out of this, we are in taxes.
Oh, yeah, you clean up everything too.